Again, a confirmed tornado on the ground in downtown Conyers. This is a very dangerous and life-threatening weather event. Get into the interior section of your house, away from windows or a basement if you have. And there's the debris right there in the Millstead area near the Rockdale Medical Center. Right. Channel 1 Atlanta.
There is a storm coming, an event like the world has never seen before. The emerging event will have little to do with weather, but more about developing situations that were foreseen many years ago. We have always warned you during severe weather and news events that affected many. Now, Channel 1 Atlanta begins a new series to warn you about what's coming soon and make sure you are prepared. Join us on a new journey, as according to a recent survey, a lot of people believe we are living in the last days. Current news events show us now more than ever. In history, time is setting the stage for the coming storm, a new series, now playing only on Channel 1 Atlanta.
intensifying as it makes its way through the Gulf of Mexico towards Florida's west coast.
Yeah, scary to see this spread. This afternoon, dozens of counties in Florida are under an emergency order ahead of Hurricane Milton. The storm's set to make landfall less than 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene slammed much of the southeast, killing hundreds of people.
Know that you're not going to be able to be told with 100-degree certainty where this storm is going to go this far out in advance.
Residents on Florida's coast filling up sandbags and preparing for the worst, with Hurricane Milton gaining strength in the Gulf of Mexico, eyeing landfall this week. Governor Ron DeSantis put Florida's Gulf Coast on alert, with 51 counties now under an emergency order. It's set to be the second round of storm surges, heavy rain, and devastating wind speeds in as many weeks, as recovery from Hurricane Helene in the southeast is still in its early stages. The National Guard has completed 422 flight missions since the storm hit, delivering medical supplies, generators, and other necessities. North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis, a Republican, pushing back against misinformation, claiming disaster funds have been spent on migrants.
Many of these observations are not even from people on the ground. I believe that we have to stay focused on rescue operations, recovery operations, clearing operations, and we don't need any of these distractions on the ground.
Crews are working round the clock to restore power and cell service as the death toll surpasses 227 people, with more than 170 still missing. Mackenzie Rink got good news after 8 days with no contact. She and her mom could finally reunite.
For me, it was just relief and thankfulness that I have a mom and I have somebody, because there's so many people that are losing those that I know that they just wish they could hug again, and they never will be able to, and they may never know if they can.
You feel that pain. President Biden has been briefed on Hurricane Milton and is tracking FEMA's efforts there. The president also announced the deployment of 500 more active duty troops to help with the recovery after Hurricane Helene. Live in the Satellite News Center, Lori Wilson, Channel 2 Action News.
Well, thank you very much. And of course, here with the team too is keeping an eye on Hurricane Milton as we give you a live look at our Midtown Tower camera on your Monday afternoon. Temperatures are going to start to cool off in the days ahead here, but Brian Monahan just got new information on the strength of Milton. Brian, what do you know?
Yeah, just this morning we watched it go from a Category 2 to a Category 3 to a Category 4, and now in the last 5 minutes or so, a Category 5 hurricane. The hurricane hunters in and out there finding dropping pressure, increasing wind. Hurricane Milton now a Category 5 hurricane. Wind at 160 miles per hour, gusts to almost 200, moving slowly to the east-southeast at about 9 miles per hour. Here's the thing, over the next 24 hours or so, Milton is going to move over some of the deepest and warmest waters of the entire Gulf of Mexico, the entire Atlantic basin. That means with these water temperatures 1 to 4 degrees above average, that's the fuel, the energy for this storm to keep strengthening. Now, as we get closer to landfall on Wednesday and Thursday morning, this is going to likely weaken some. Still a major hurricane, but here's the latest track taking it as a major Category 3 hurricane toward the west coast of Florida. Tremendous amounts of water being pushed toward the west coast, potential for catastrophic impacts there with all of that water getting pushed toward the coast. That's that storm surge. Now, on the other side of Milton, we've got this dry weather in our forecast across North Georgia. We'll talk more about Milton's track and how that track is going to impact our weather. Actually bring in some cooler weather to North Georgia in the days ahead. That's in just a few minutes.
Brian, thank you very much. And of course, count on Channel 2 Action News for the latest on Hurricane Milton. We'll have live Severe Weather Team 2 coverage as the storm strengthens and makes landfall on air and on WSBTV.com. Developing now, nearly 20 schools in Rockdale County are holding virtual learning today through Wednesday. The superintendent says they're taking extra precautions because of the haze and smoke drifting from the biolab fire. This comes as a shelter-in-place order in Rockdale County ended at 7 o'clock this morning. The biolab says a team of experts are actively working to neutralize the gas pumping into the air. And you can voice your thoughts on biolab at the next Rockdale County Commissioners meeting. A resolution declaring a state of emergency is on the agenda, and it includes time for public comment. That meeting starts at 10 Tuesday morning tomorrow. And of course, you can count on Channel 2 Action News for continuing coverage on air and online. We'll bring you any new developments of the impacts of the chemical fire in Rockdale County and surrounding communities.
is all quiet, and yes, we're going to get to 86 despite this cold front sliding through the front. We're really going to feel its impact beginning tonight. We're going to go hour by hour on the forecast and talk more about Milton and this front involved in just a moment. Alex?
Okay, Alex, we appreciate it. Thank you. Today, people in Rockdale County woke up under another shelter-in-place order. For a week now, people have been told to minimize their exposure to that large plume of smoke from the biolab fire. Now, some are calling for the plant to be shut down as there's been a back and forth over best and safe practices. Fox 5's Mark Teichner is at the state capitol with this developing story.
Well, for some folks, enough is enough when it comes to biolab. Biolab, shut it down! Sunday, a small group of protesters gathered at the state capitol calling for biolab to be closed. They want the company to fully compensate both workers and community members who've been impacted by the fire, and say the messaging.
State crews are helping them clear this debris. If they can't get it all cleared in time, it will be secured here. A lot of the streets here are still full of debris. Some residents still emptying out their homes the best they can before the next storm. And city and state crews and contractors are also working around the clock to remove debris across Pinellas County. Anyone can now take storm debris to the solid waste disposal facility around 34th Street gate there in Pinellas County 24/7. St. Pete also just announced they have a new debris site for residents and private haulers. That is on 72nd Street North. That's across from the Azalea Park there. That is open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. County officials also ask you, before you leave for Milton, please secure debris that may still be left outside your home. Put a tarp over it or put it in your garage if you have one. County self-serve sandbag sites are also open across the county. You can find more information on that on the county's website, on our website as well. Another thing the county is doing, they're working with state and local partners and contractors to clear as much sand from Hurricane Helene and debris again as possible. Sunset Beach and Paso Grill have been cleared of sand. And back out here in Treasure Island, we saw these comfort stations that were set up just about a week ago here for residents who lost everything, who weren't able to shower at home, weren't able to wash their hands, go to the bathroom in their own homes. Well, they have since been cleared. There's just this one here still out here. We've seen crews out this morning, though, hauling those away in preparations for Milton because they want to make sure this area is clear as it can be for safety issues. But just a sobering sight to see these comfort stations that are helping people from the last storm now moved away for this impending storm. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, it is not the sight any of us wanted to see. All right, Kaylee Tracy reporting live. Thank you. In Pasco County, there are mandatory evacuation orders for certain areas. Fox 13's Regina Gonzalez has more on who's been told to leave, and she filed this report from Wesley Chapel earlier this morning.
Well, here in Pasco County, mandatory evacuations are officially in effect for zones A and B. So that's mobile homes, manufactured homes, low-lying areas, and then, of course, flood-prone areas. And voluntary evacuations are in effect for zone C. Now, officials are urging people to first plan on staying with family, friends, neighbors, or even at hotels more inland if possible. If not, you can self-evacuate directly to one of these shelters that will officially open this afternoon at noon. So just a couple of minutes ago, Centennial Middle School in Dade City, 5A High School in Hudson, Wesley Chapel High School, River Ridge Middle and High Schools in Newport Richey, and then the Fasano Regional Hurricane Center in Hudson is going to be a special needs only shelter. Now, as we head into the Pasco County EOC, it is an all hands on deck situation there. They said starting today, things are going to go from operating on a 12-hour basis to around the clock ahead of Milton's landfall. In a Sunday press conference, they stressed to vulnerable residents to take these warnings seriously. They said to use Helene as an example. They also stressed to keep in mind that there's another life-threatening hazard added to this mix, and that's the thousands of cubic yards of debris left from Helene in some of these neighborhoods.
The debris in and of itself presents such a complicating factor. If we had Hurricane Milton coming before us without this debris, the operation would be an entirely different story. But with this debris, it represents in the wind, it represents a hazard to our first responders just trying to even respond.
Now, some of this debris was originally brought to that Magnolia golf course, and it's in the process of being relocated to a more remote location to get away from nearby homes. You can also do your part, though, by dropping debris off at the West Pasco Resource Recovery Center in Spring Hill. That'll be open 24/7 until conditions deteriorate ahead of Milton. If you can't, County Administrator Mike Caraballa encourages you to secure it on your own property. Meanwhile, 2 sandbag stations are going to be available 24/7 at Magnolia Valley Golf Course and Pasco County Public Works. 2 additional sites are going to be open from sunrise to sunset at Veterans Memorial Park and Pasco Fire Rescue Station 29. Keep in mind that these sandbag locations are self-serve. They're going to try and restock sand and sandbags as they can, weather permitting. As you make these last-minute preparations, local leaders are also urging folks to sign up for Pasco Alert, so that way you can get any text messages or emails as we start to see conditions from Milton when it inches closer to Florida. For now, I'm Regina Gonzalez reporting in Wesley Chapel. We'll send it back to you.
Regina, thank you. A heads up now, if you still need sandbags, pretty much every county has filling stations open today. In Hillsborough, they have at least 5 of them, and they all opened at 8 a.m. and they'll close at 7 p.m. In Pinellas County, Oldsmar is opening a sandbar station at 10. It's in the parking lot of the Oldsmar Sports Complex. And if you go, most stations limit you to 10 bags per vehicle. And they also don't guarantee shovels, so you might want to bring your own. And you also may need your ID to prove that you do live in that county. Also, pack your patience, prepare to wait. Tampa had a 2-hour line yesterday. Northeast Park in St. Pete had a 90-minute wait. Most Bay Area schools were already closed ahead of the storm, and that includes Hillsborough and Pinellas. Only 3 districts are open today, Citrus, Hernando, and Polk, but all 3 are expected to close starting tomorrow and at least through Wednesday because they need those schools as shelters. Tampa International Airport will close at 9 a.m. tomorrow and stay closed until they assess any damage from the storm. And St. Pete Clearwater International Airport will close after the last flight Tuesday and remain closed Wednesday and Thursday. For more information on sandbag locations, evacuations, closures, and Milton's latest track, download the Fox Local mobile app now. You can also visit our website, fox13news.com. On our website are links to all county emergency websites. And if you don't know your evacuation zone, go there and look it up now. Again, you need to know your evacuation zone. If you don't, fox13news.com is the place to go. Click on this image, find your county, and look up your zone. There's a ton of more information from each county on there for you. We're back right after this.
Hey, it's Dr. Mike. Listen, new research finds that if you're older, over 65, if you exercise, you're going to improve your memory. Now, it actually helps with a part of the brain called the hippo.
Cell phone battery, consider shallow charging. Instead of draining your battery to 0, recharge at 50%. When you charge it up, stop at about 90%. Once a month, you should run it down to 5% and recharge so it can recalibrate its self-assessment. When charging is done, remove your phone from the charger. Electronics will age faster if they're left plugged in when fully charged. I'm Steve Noviello. That's my 2 cents. Spend it wisely.
Hi, I'm Heather Sullivan with Sullivan Smart Sense to save you some money on travel. Before you book your next flight, check out the new Airline Customer Service Dashboard. It's on transportation.gov. If your flight is delayed or canceled, it'll show you which airlines will rebook you for free, plus which airlines will offer free hotel or meal vouchers if you get stuck. That's a big savings.
If you are relying on Amazon reviews to help you decide on a purchase, heads up. According to FakeSpot, the following categories are the most likely to have bogus or biased feedback: watches, Christmas decor, watch bands, sweaters, and pullovers. But the top spot for fake reviews? Slippers. FakeSpot says 71% on Amazon have fake reviews, with thousands of products and barely any name brands. I'm Steve Noviello. That's my 2 cents. Spend it wisely.
Well, as we've mentioned, a big concern ahead of Hurricane Milton. All of that storm debris left over from Hurricane Helene. Officials are trying to clear as much of it as they can before the next storm comes. Fox 13's Walter Allen headed to the McKay Bay transfer station in Tampa and found a long line of people dumping their debris.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, we're at the McKay Bay Waste Management Resource Facility just to the southeast of Ybor City, just south of State Road 60. And this has been the scene all morning long, basically since 7 o'clock this morning. Cars have been lining up on the left side. These are the vehicles that are trying to get rid of storm debris, and they have been lining up. Like I mentioned, 7 o'clock this morning is when they open, and they have until 7 o'clock tonight. So if you are coming out here to one of the several facilities to dump storm debris, expect a line. You need to budget some time, especially if you're going to make multiple trips. So we'll talk about the two different categories. So we'll talk about Hillsborough County, but first let's talk with the city of Tampa. What they are accepting. They're taking household appliances. They're taking 2 per visit. They're taking furniture, mattresses, yard waste, toilets. They're also taking barbecue grills, but propane tanks must have their top and lid removed. You will need proof of an active solid waste account as well as a government ID. Now, they say that the waste must have originated at the address of the account. Hillsborough County, the county has launched a 24-hour temporary debris drop-off site at their resource recovery facility. That's off of 350 North Falkenberg Road. There are several locations, including Hillsborough Heights Community Collection Center in Seffner, but the location off of Falkenberg Road, they're accepting yard waste, construction, demolition debris, furniture, other storm-damaged household items, appliances, as long as they're empty appliances. They are not accepting household hazardous waste, regular household garbage. Now, we talked to a number of folks who say that really, to get this stuff off of their neighborhoods, off of the streets, time is of the essence.
I was going to wait for the city to come by and pick it up until, Milton showed up. And then, and so rather than, it'd be probably a shot to the face to have to pick up all this stuff and then have it blown back around.
It's not going to be lining the streets. It's going to be all over the place. I mean, they say it's going to be a good wind event, so that's my main concern. I usually don't board up the windows at my house, but I am this time just because I'm worried about the wind.
Again, this is the scene at McKay Bay Waste Management Resource Facility. I would assume that it's going to be a similar scene at the other facilities all across Hillsborough County, as well as the city of Tampa. They are open here from 7 until 7 o'clock tonight. And again, time is of the essence. Everybody's trying to get rid of the storm debris before Milton arrives. In Hillsborough County, Walter Allen, Fox 13 News.
Thanks, Walter. Really is hard when you see images like that, not to feel anxiety right now, but if you prepare for the worst, just go ahead and prepare. That does help take some of the edge off.
In preparing, that's all you can do. So we can't worry about anything else. We just do the best that we can.
Yep.
And have some patience with everybody else.
That's right. Be kind.
Yes, exactly. Yes. But this is obviously going to be an extremely stressful event. Things are going to be changing as we go through the next couple of days. But bottom line is we're all preparing for really the worst at this point. I mean, that's what we preach all the time with this is you prepare for the worst, you hope for the best. And that's exactly what we have to do right now. So this is now a Category 5. You look at all the lightning around the center of this, and that's always that indication of an extremely strong storm. And that's exactly what we have. Very small eye. So we're going to start to see this going through what we call those eye wall replacement cycles. And as it does so, the intensity of it fluctuates. It's really, really difficult for a storm to become this strong and maintain that intensity the whole way through. They just can't do it. So it will go through those eye wall replacement cycles, but as it does so, as it weakens, it also gets strong, it gets larger. So the storm, it will grow in size. Right now, winds are at 160 miles an hour. It's currently moving to the east-southeast at 9 miles an hour, but that track hasn't changed much. But we're going to watch this over the next several days because those little small changes, they could spell big differences in the impacts that we feel. But essentially, anywhere within this yellow zone, that's where the center of this still could go. We could still see this pushing a bit further to the south. We could still see this going a bit further to the north because models have been all over the place. The models have really, really struggled with this. But anywhere, if you're, say, right at that line to the right of it, so you're to the right of the center as it comes ashore, you are going to be in the worst part of this. So we also have the warnings, or the watches rather, along the coastline. Those will be upgraded into warnings later on today. Computer models, there you're seeing still a decent spread in the models, so that tells us there's still a lot of uncertainty in this, but you're noticing more and more of a cluster of these just to our north. So what we've been talking about for years and years. This is really that worst case scenario that we've always worried about. So we have to prepare for this in case it actually comes to fruition here. So one of the things we're also watching is as we go through the next several days, we do have that stronger wind, that wind shear, which is to the north of this system. So right now it's sitting in an area that conditions are favorable for that intensification. That's exactly why we've seen that. The warm water, the light wind shear. But as this works its way over into the Eastern Gulf and pulls a bit further to the north, this is all strong wind. So that will tend to weaken this storm. That's why we are calling for this storm to weaken. It will also start to pull in some dry air. Some dry air from the north will be pulled in. We call it dry air entrainment. So we need these things to weaken this storm. The slower the storm goes and gets into some of the strong wind, that will start to weaken the storm even more. So those are things that we actually want to happen. We want it to slow down and be subjected to that strong wind shear for a longer period of time. Give more time for some of that dry air to get into this system and weaken it. But we can't count on something like that, so you have to prepare at this point. So where you see that pink shade, which is essentially all of us, we are under that hurricane watch that will be upgraded to a hurricane warning later on, and then the storm surge. Now remember, with Helene, we were talking 5 to 8 feet across Tampa Bay. We're now looking at 8 to 12 feet. So this is obviously worse and a much worse scenario with this storm. So from Anclote down to the south, 8 to 12 feet. Remember, it's from basically that center point where the center moves through and to the south of that. So if the center moves to the south of Tampa Bay, we will not see that surge across Tampa Bay. If we see this through Tampa Bay or to the north, that's what will push all that water right up into Tampa Bay. So you look at the Fox model, and here we are watching as we go through the next couple of days, a very powerful, very dangerous storm. But as we get into Wednesday morning, you are seeing some of that wind shear starting to pull that northern side of the storm and start to disrupt that circulation. You're also noticing the eye looking a bit more ragged. That's some of that dry air that will start to get entrained into the system. So that will tend to weaken it some, but this is still going to be an extremely dangerous situation moving basically right over the top of us as we head into, looks like, late Wednesday and into early Thursday. For today, you still have time to prepare. You want to rush to completion on this. 82 degrees, some scattered showers around, and then that 7-day forecast. Everything heading our way as we head into Wednesday night, and then we'll clear things out as we head towards the weekend and those daytime highs back into the mid-80s, Linda.
All right, Jim, thanks. If you're thinking about heading to a shelter, don't forget the basics. Take things that will keep you comfortable, and of course, any medicines that you will need. Take things to pass the time for entertainment. It may not be the lap of luxury where you're staying, but you will be safe. Also, be sure to check for a pet-friendly shelter if you need one.
Here at Brandon Ford, our hearts go out to the thousands impacted by Hurricane Helene. As a vital member of the Gulf Coast community, Brandon Ford would like to help make this difficult time a little less difficult. If you've experienced a verified total vehicle loss or damage, you may be eligible for Hurricane Helene Disaster Relief Employee Pricing. Come see us at Highway 60 and 301 in Tampa or at BrandonFord.com to find out more about this special Hurricane Helene Disaster Relief Employee Pricing Program. We're all in this together, and Brandon Ford will guide you every step of the way.
Hey, I'm Heather Sullivan with Sullivan Smart Sense to help you cut your impulse spending. Remove your credit card information from the retail websites where you shop, like Amazon or Walmart. If it's stored, it's just too easy to click and spend. Having to enter your credit card information each time gives you more time to think before you buy.
Hey, it's Dr. Mike. New data finds that at ages 44 and 60, you end up aging more quickly from a biological point of view. Now, what can you do, folks? You need to limit your alcohol, get more sleep, make sure you exercise, and certainly don't smoke, and you will invest in your health 401k. I'm Dr. Mike Sirigliano with the Fox Medical Team.
Well, AAA is urging everyone to fill up their gas tanks ahead of Hurricane Milton, but budget some extra time because the lines are long at some gas stations. The good news is gas prices fell by 7 cents last week, averaging $3.12 per gallon in the Tampa Bay area. The local power companies say be prepared for power outages. They're going to happen. TECO is expecting widespread, extended outages. The company says 600 line workers are prepared to work around the clock to restore power as quickly as they can. Duke Energy is also getting ready for outages, telling us this morning that they're bringing in hundreds of workers from all over the country to help our area.
And in Florida, we work very closely with the other utilities. And fortunately for Duke Energy as well, we're able to tap into our resources in other parts of our service area around the country. So we actually have crews coming in from the Midwest, which includes our teams in Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio.
Homeowners who evacuate should turn all of the power off before leaving, but TECO advises customers to keep their natural gas service on. It helps maintain the proper pressure in your home's gas pipes. Less than 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene, Hernando County is preparing its residents for another strong storm, and emergency management officials say safety is a priority and they don't want a repeat of what happened with Helene.
Well, we did have to make some rescues last time. Well, luckily, in Hernando County, we did not have any loss of life in the last storm event, but we do not want to have to make those rescues again this time. So again, if you are west of 19, you're in a low-lying area, your property floods, or if you're in a structure you do not think can handle high-level hurricane-force winds, we advise you to make shelter plans starting tomorrow and before midday Wednesday.
Officials say in addition to shutting off electricity to their homes, anyone evacuating should remove any electric vehicles, scooters, or tech with lithium batteries to avoid fires. We saw a number of those. Well, there's still time to throw together a hurricane kit, and there's a good chance many people, as we just mentioned, are going to need it when they lose power. So here's some things that you can get still. Flashlights and batteries, cell phone chargers, battery-operated radios, non-perishable food and water, a manual can opener, a first aid kit, prescription medications, very important, personal hygiene items, blankets, rain gear, extra clothing, baby care items, and food for your pets.
Hey, I'm Heather Sullivan with Sullivan Smart Sense to save you some money on groceries. Use the self-checkout rather than the cashier. A study by IHL Consulting found it reduces impulse buys 32% among women and 17% among men. There's less merchandise at the register, and you pay more attention to that total.
to Fox 13 News at noon.
Israelis mark 1 year since the October 7th attacks with solemn vigils and ceremonies while the fighting grinds on along several fronts. Fox News correspondent Trey Yingst has more from southern Israel.
A year after the October 7th attacks, Israel is fighting a two-front war. And on Monday, Hamas showed it's still putting up a fight, launching rockets that set off air raid sirens in Tel Aviv, as well as in towns and cities closer to the Gaza border. And further north, a rocket attack from Hezbollah caused major damage near the Lebanese border. The IDF responding with more airstrikes on Hezbollah targets. But locals claim they're also hitting civilians.
Nothing is left. We have been displaced to the streets. People are dying of hunger. There is no life left for us.
Israeli officials pushing back on those claims, calling any collateral damage the fault of Hezbollah and Hamas, not the Israeli military.
We are minimizing casualties. So you need to understand the main problem is the fact those terror organizations are using them as human shields, and by doing that, committing a double war crime.
And on a possible third front, Israel is still considering how to respond to a recent missile attack from Iran. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there will be consequences, but President Biden is urging him not to hit Iran's oil fields, while also backing Israel's right to self-defense.
The Israelis have every right to respond to the vicious attacks on them, not just from the Iranians, but from everyone from Hezbollah to Houthis.
Here in the community of Be'eri, it still feels like October 7th as the war rages on in the distance. In southern Israel, Trey Yingst, Fox News.
In the ongoing war in Ukraine, a Russian strike injures 18 civilians in the Ukrainian city of Kherson. 4 glide bombs struck various residential buildings this morning, and one of those explosives hit a school that had been previously destroyed. 2 of those injured were a 3- and 4-year-old. Russia's attacks continue as the war is soon to enter into its 3rd year next February. Several hot-button social issues are on the docket as the Supreme Court begins its new term. The court will determine whether states can ban puberty blockers and other transgender treatments for minors. Currently, 24 states, including Florida, ban such treatment for minors. The court will also hear a case involving so-called ghost guns that are build-it-yourself kits, making the guns untraceable. The court will also hear whether a law requiring age verification on pornography websites is constitutional. The new term runs through June. Well, changes could be coming at drug giant Pfizer. Chevron sells assets in Canada, and a luxury wine brand is going private. Fox's CJ Papa has today's business headlines.
Former giant Pfizer is now the target of an activist investor. The Wall Street Journal says Starboard Value has purchased a $1 billion stake in the company. Pfizer's stock price has stalled after a rally that was fed by demand for its COVID-19 vaccine. Chevron is selling its stake in oil sands and shale assets to Canadian Natural Resources. It's being paid $6.5 billion. Markets are green across the board so far this year. The Dow closed Friday at its 34th record of the year. There's a big week of inflation data on deck. We'll get the September CPI report out on Thursday. And on Friday, we'll get the September PPI report.
I think 2.3% on CPI Thursday. And as far as Friday's concerned, PPI, I think that's going to be less of a market mover.
Goldman Sachs has lowered the odds of the U.S. slipping into a recession in the next year. Its economists now say there's only a 15% possibility. The revision was prompted by the latest employment report showing stronger than expected job growth and the unemployment rate slipping to 4.1%. And luxury wine brand Duckhorn is being taken private. Investment firm Butterfly Equity will buy the California-based business for $1.95 billion. Duckhorn's wines start in the $30 a bottle range, but its most high-end products sell for hundreds of bucks. CJ Papa, Fox News.
Well, just in time for spooky season, Krispy Kreme is celebrating the 40th anniversary of the theatrical debut of Ghostbusters. The donut collection pays homage to the original 1984 film, and starting today, they're available in stores individually or in a limited edition custom box resembling the traps the Ghostbusters used to capture ghosts. Fun. Well, we might need to eat some donuts as we talk about more hurricane preparation tips for you. Your hurricane supplies should include 1 gallon of water per person per day for up to 7 days. Pack enough non-perishable foods like canned foods, drinks, snack foods, juices, baby foods for 7 days. Have several days worth of paper plates, plastic cups, plastic utensils on hand. Here's a live look outside. Meteorologist Jim Weber will have much more when we come back.
Hey, I'm Heather Sullivan with Sullivan Smart Sense. Okay, we all know you can save money at the grocery store buying generic or store brands, but did you know you could save an average of 40%? CNET compared prices on 20 items and cut the bill from $125 to $75, and that's savings that can add up.
County. Mandatory evacuation for everybody on this island. As of right now, you need to leave. It's important, and especially because rescue help cannot get to you in the middle of this storm. They were able to do some water rescues during Helene, a lot of them. That storm was 100 miles offshore. The surge created all the issues. This is going to be a wind event, which means help just won't be able to come until that storm is passed. Police Chief of Holmes Beach, William Tukager, is here. And I mean, that's the message. If you choose to stay, you will be on your own.
Yeah, you're on your own. With Helene, the water got to be between 4 and 5 feet in surge. They're expecting double that for Milton. We will not be here. The wind alone causes us to have to leave the island. So fire, police, EMS, everybody will be off the island. So there will be nobody to rescue you. So our message is that it's time to go. Make sure you're out of here latest tomorrow afternoon before the winds start coming. You don't want to be out when the winds are coming. You don't want to be there. You don't want to be that person that puts their life in jeopardy for a house that might not be here. You know, with this storm coming through, we don't know what the island's going to look like on the other side on Thursday. Yeah. It could be devastating.
You're absolutely right, and don't put your crews in danger either.
Right. Exactly. You know, you can't put our people in danger. I won't do it. My people will be off the island once the winds are sustained at 45 miles an hour.
And the reality is, the mayor pointed this out earlier, is that most people aren't going to be here because they don't have homes to ride this through in.
Exactly. You know, we have very few homes that came through unscathed. just the newer homes that were raised up. All of our single-story homes, 95 to 100% of them had 6 inches to 3 to 4 feet of water. The mayor's house alone had almost 4 feet of water in it.
Wow. I know you and the county, the state, doing the best to get rid of this debris. If push comes to shove and whatever you have left, you're now telling residents, put it back in a garage or wherever that you can get it out of the way the most, and then leave.
That's correct. Put it in your garage, shut the door, and we'll put it back out after Milton and possibly after the storm that comes Friday after that.
And then if people are leaving, your message is cut the power to your house and don't leave anything with a battery in the garage.
Yes, definitely. No battery, no electric cars, no scooters that are electric, no electric golf carts. Take them out of your house. We've had multiple fires days after when the corrosion gets to the battery that start a fire in the garage and damages the house. Turn off your power, get your electric vehicles out of the garage, get them off the island if you can. If not, get them away from your house.
Thank you, Chief, very much. You stay safe during the storm. Good luck, and
Thank you.
We'll see you on the other side.
Yep.
There you go, folks. That is the message. If you're an Anna Maria Island resident, you got to get out and do your best to stay safe, and we'll all do our best to get through this storm together. Charlie Belcher, Fox 13 News.
So we were talking about this, but Milton is a rare one.
It really is. I mean, this is an unusual track, but this is a track this time of the year. Anything that's in the Gulf of Mexico, it's going to end up heading towards Florida. So that's why this is such a problem. And just watching how strong this storm has become, just because the waters are so warm across the Gulf of Mexico.
Unusual that the tracks still, there's a variety?
Just because there's so many moving parts in this forecast. We're talking about a cold front coming down and the trough and all this, and so that's why you're just seeing an unusual amount of spread than what we've become accustomed to with all these past several storms, where we've just all somewhat marveled in how well the forecast models have done, and with this one, they're struggling. So you just have to we have to count on that this is going to affecting us, and we just have to hope that things turn out better for us. But we are somewhere along the West Coast talking about an extremely powerful major hurricane making landfall across our West Coast. Now the hurricane watches and the storm surges watches, they're all up right now. Those will be increased into warnings most likely sometime later on today. Now the big key is going to be exactly where this landfall happens. To the center and to the right of that center, that's where the worst parts of this will be. So we're always telling you, don't focus in on the exact line, and I don't want you to necessarily focus in on it. I just want you to understand that's where the worst parts of it are. But anywhere inside that yellow shaded area, that is still fair game as far as that landfall. And to say at this point that this track that we're looking at right now, that's what it's going to be, it's just not realistic, especially with all the uncertainty that we do have with this. But we are going to see that storm surge, and this storm surge is more than likely going to be larger than what we just saw with Helene. Category 5 hurricane right now, very small eye, so this is going to start to go through those eye wall replacement cycles as we go through the next several days. Those eye wall replacement cycles, you get that fluctuation. The storm weakens, but it grows larger as it weakens, and then it rebuilds that eye wall and it starts to ramp back up in intensity. And it's quite possible we could see a couple of these over the next several days. But right now, it's a Category 5. Winds are at 160 miles an hour, working its way very close to the Yucatan, and then you start to see that fluctuation in intensity. Now, as it works its way into the eastern Gulf and getting closer to us, that's where it will start to experience that stronger wind shear. We've been talking about that wind shear across the northern Gulf of Mexico for many, many days, and that's still there, and that will weaken this storm. But even though it weakens it, it's still going to be a very strong and a very dangerous storm, and something we have not experienced on our coastline in a very, very long time. We are talking generations since we have seen something like this across our coastline. So there you're seeing that spread in the computer models, but you're at least seeing somewhat of a clustering a little bit further to the north. So that's that worst case scenario as far as we're concerned here in Tampa Bay, to really pile in all that water across the coastline. There's that shear. That is what will tend to weaken this storm somewhat as it works its way closer to us. Also drier air in the atmosphere as it works its way up into this, and that strong wind, that wind shear will help to drive some of that dry air in. That's about the only things that, combined with the eye wall replacement cycles, that will weaken this storm. But at this point, you can't count on this storm weakening enough to not cause serious problems across our coastline and damage. So where you see that pink shade, that is the hurricane watch that will be upgraded to a hurricane warning later on. Now, just to give you an idea of that storm surge, if the landfall happens further to the south, we have more of an offshore wind, and then you have that onshore wind. That's where you see the maximum surge down here, and you see no surge to the north of it. Now, if that track goes further to the north, you see what happens. We are now pushing all that onshore flow right onto us, and that's where we get that maximum surge heading in to Tampa Bay. That's why this is still such a dire situation and a very serious situation as we go through the coming days. 8 to 12 feet. If that track goes right over Tampa or just to the north, 8 to 12 feet right up into Tampa Bay, heading all the way down into Manatee and Sarasota. North of this, we're looking at 5 to 10 feet. So anywhere you go along our coastline, we are still talking about the potential of very substantial storm surge. Now, we're not going to see along the entire coastline. It will be basically to the right of that. But here it is on the Fox model, working its way right towards the coast. You do start to see that wind shear and some of that dry air affecting this storm as it works its way towards us. As far as the rainfall is concerned, this is not necessarily a big rain event. That's not our biggest concern. It will be the storm surge, and it will be the wind. And we'll obviously be tracking this very closely over the coming days as well. Linda?
Let's take a break. Talk about some entertainment, shall we? Fox's hit drama 911 Lone Star is back tonight for its final season, and Fox's Ashley Dvorkin sat down with the show's star and executive producer Rob Lowe about returning to the series, what impresses him about the show, and sharing a screen with family.
Dispatch, we have a problem.
Fox's 911 Lone Star picks up with the 126 still dealing with the train derailment, which started this season.
One of the things I love most about Lone Star is how big we're able to go. I mean, you walk on a set of Lone Star and you look around at the scope and the spectacle of it, and you cannot believe that it's a television show.
Captain Owen Strand, played by star and executive producer Rob Lowe, also names the station's new lieutenant. Lowe spoke about what it's like now when he returns to this drama and a character he's played for 5 seasons.
The beauty of playing a character over 5 seasons is not only have you explored a lot of the backstory, but you've lived that character. I mean, just the hours where I played Owen over 5 years, it's a long time. So it's very, very different than doing a movie or something like that where you're just popping into somebody's life. Like, Owen Strand is in my DNA now.
Lowe recently has worked with his son on the Netflix comedy Unstable and shared the screen with his brother on 911 Lone Star.
Was it something that you always wanted to do? Was this just a good time for all the family time?
It's the universe. I mean, if you'd have told me, when I was a young actor, that there would come a time where my brother and I would be playing brothers on a show, and that my son and I would create a show and play fathers, it's just life is an amazing adventure, and you never know what is going to unfold. Believe me, rare gift that I am not unaware of how rare and how grateful I am about it.
Where's our H2O?
Fox's 911 Lone Star continues Mondays. In Hollywood, Ashley Dvorkin, Fox News.
I got the sneaking suspicion that we're not giving the people what they want.
The Joker sequel managed to claim the top spot at the box office over the weekend, but fell far below projections. It was expected to bring in about $70 million, but wound up with just $40 million. To compare, the first movie made $96 million in its opening weekend. Apparently, audiences didn't care for the sequel. They gave the film a D rating and a score of 33% on Rotten Tomatoes. Another hurricane tip for you. Maybe you've never put together a first aid kit, but first aid kits should include sterile adhesive bandages, sterile gauze pads, adhesive tape, scissors, tweezers, antiseptic, hand sanitizer, sunscreen, pain reliever, Q-tips, and cotton balls. Stay with us. We're back after this. The southeast are still picking up debris and working to restore power. And here we go, another storm on the way. Fox News correspondent Madison Scarpino has more.
Thousands without power and piles of debris still sitting across the southeast. And now parts of the region are bracing for another major hurricane.
I'm just being proactive rather than reactive.
I have water, I have canned goods, I have flashlights, I have pretty much everything else I need.
Milton is expected to make landfall on Wednesday in the Tampa Bay area and remain a hurricane as it moves through central Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis says up to 4,000 National Guardsmen are available to help clear debris from Hurricane Helene, warning it could become projectiles during this next storm.
We had a lot of debris left from Hurricane Helene on Florida's Gulf Coast. That creates a huge hazard if you have a major hurricane hit in that area this week.
Forecasters expect Milton to stay south of North Carolina, where some communities remain cut off due to flood damage and power outages caused by Helene. Here in Banner Elk, it's a steady stream of helicopters and trucks that are picking up and dropping off supplies to devastated communities. Teams of volunteers have been sorting through tons of donations of food, water, clothing, and medicine for those who desperately need it.
It's boots on the ground. Everybody is coming out. They're pitching together. They're cleaning up. They're gathering food, anything they can to go down and actually talk to the people at the sites that are in trouble.
Volunteers say that they're also working to send Starlinks and other technology to hard-hit areas where some people still don't have cell service. In Banner Elk, North Carolina, Madison Scarpino, Fox News.
I know we've said it, but we can't stress enough. Now is the time to know your evacuation zone. If you don't, go to fox13news.com and click on the image, this one, and find your county to look up your zone. Back with another check on the storm with Jim right after this.
There is a storm coming, an event like the world has never seen before. The emerging event will have little to do with weather, but more about developing situations that were foreseen many years ago. We have always warned you during severe weather and news events that affected many. Now, Channel 1 Atlanta begins a new series to warn you about what's coming soon and make sure you are prepared. Join us on a new journey, as according to a recent survey, a lot of people believe we are living in the last days. Current news events show us now more than ever. In history, time is setting the stage for the coming storm, a new series, now playing only on Channel 1 Atlanta.
That doesn't very often happen. This is the third time I've seen it in my time doing this with this kind of super fast intensification. Hurricane Wilma in 2005 and Hurricane Felix moved through the Caribbean and did this kind of thing. Moving east-southeast at 9 is the latest report. So it's still sinking south a little bit, and that sinking south is keeping it in more pristine kind of atmosphere down here and away from these strong upper-level winds that you can see blowing up there. As a matter of fact, the strong upper-level winds are actually helping evacuate air out of the top of the hurricane, which allows more air to rush in underneath. So it's just found a slice of atmosphere and water that's extremely conducive. Looking close up, you'll just never see a hurricane much more classic in its design. We also have this going on up here, which is interesting. This is part of a front we'll talk about here in just a moment that apparently is deflecting it a little bit south. There's the way the track has been wobbling around. As I said, these wobbles like this can make the difference between north or south of Tampa Bay when we get downstream here. There you see the movement, though. It's still sinking a little bit closer to Mexico here, so hurricane warnings in effect for this northern coast here of Mexico. There's the wind analysis from the models. You see the strongest winds are back in here, it looks like right now, but you can see how close they're going to come to Mexico. That's why they have the hurricane warnings in effect there. All right, so here's the forecast. The idea is it's already a Category 5 and maintaining Category 5 nominally through tonight. Storms that are this intense can't keep going. It's like a top. If you spin a top, yes, it spins, but eventually it starts wobbling, and that's what happens with hurricanes. So the thinking is that over the next day or so, even though the atmospheric conditions here look conducive, maybe it'll interact with northern Mexico a little bit. Some factors may come into play, internal factors that weaken it some and create some weakening as it slowly makes the turn and then picks up speed in the direction of Florida. So Hurricane Center is thinking, even though the conditions here really look extremely conducive, that internal processes within the storm might weaken the top winds, but expand the size of the diameter of the circulation, which means starts moving more water in the direction of Florida, more storm surge with a bigger storm. As we just went through with Helene, Helene was a very large storm, and that's why even though when it passed much of Florida, it wasn't at peak intensity, and it was the back side of the storm pushing the water, because it was so big, it created that big storm surge. This will be in a more exact kind of trajectory to produce giant storm surge and get bigger. So this is why we have these extreme storm surge forecasts all the way down the West Coast. So the current thinking is that as it's approaching on Wednesday morning hours, it's 145 nominally, and then weakening as it approaches the coast, because the whole atmospheric environment is going to be changing at that time, and that process may weaken those peak winds but expand out the storm. Think of it as the hurricane unraveling some. Well, unfortunately, unraveling means more storm surge farther away from the center. So yes, the center is critical, where the center comes ashore. If it comes ashore just north of Tampa Bay, that puts that maximum storm surge, now forecasting up to 12 feet, in and around the entire Tampa Bay area, over the beaches, lots of areas we'll look at in more detail in a second. And but if it comes in farther south, then obviously higher storm surge in the Fort Myers, Charlotte County, Charlotte Harbor, Naples area, and it's just too close to call exactly where it's going to maneuver around the Tampa Bay area. And I don't think, honestly, we're going to know until Wednesday. So all this action that's going to have to be taken is going to have to be taken with the idea that this could happen, this worst case sort of thing could happen for Tampa Bay. And then it moves on across the state and weakens. They still have a 90-mile-an-hour hurricane here. And by the way, we haven't talked about this, but if the storm goes out this way, nominally as forecast, the winds are coming around like this. And because of those strong upper-level winds, this part of the storm is going to be very strong. We're going to have to talk about the possibility of storm surge around North Florida, down the St. Johns River, even into Georgia, perhaps southeast Georgia for storm surge and strong winds. So that'll be downstream a little bit, outside of the window that we're currently have the watches issued. So hurricane watches for Orlando, up to Cedar Key, down to Naples, all these millions and millions and millions of people to be ready for the idea of a hurricane. In Orlando, what should you be thinking? You should be thinking, if you were there 2004 for Hurricane Charlie, think about Hurricane Charlie, but in a larger area, all of the Orlando metropolitan area in this case. We have never seen a storm like this in modern times here north of Charlotte County, where Hurricane Ian hit, obviously, on up to south of Cedar Key. We have not. This would be an entirely new, modern phenomena and historic in that part of Florida. Storm surge watches means be aware and ready of life-threatening storm surge on the entire west coast of Florida. These will be fine-tuned a little bit with the warnings, but I think the warning will be in exactly the same place. And the biggest point here is, notice this is outside the cone. This is a don't focus on the cone situation. The cone is going to narrow as the storm gets closer in terms of where the center goes, but that's not going to change where the effects are, as we saw in Ian, as we saw in Helene, and as we're going to see in Milton. There's no question about it. And the Tampa Bay, I don't want anybody to look at the numbers up here are not important. It's the colors. Just look at the yellows, oranges, and reds, and all these areas in the east side of Hillsborough Bay, downtown Tampa, Davis Island up here, the Mid-Bay Causeway, all underwater here, Tampa International Airport, over here, East Pinellas, all of the coastal areas here. If this comes in to the north up here, north of Clearwater, we're talking about water going over all those beach areas and on up into Tampa Bay, and the vast part of the populated area, important areas in Tampa Bay will be underwater. So this is an unprecedented modern time possibility at this point. Same story here once again around the Fort Myers, Punta Gorda, Charlotte Harbor area. If the storm is a little farther south, you're going to get the maximum surge in here. And look at this. This is Fort Myers Beach underwater again. Sanibel up to Captiva, Pine Island, all these areas. Even the Cape here, Cape Coral, large parts have that possibility at this point, not to mention downtown Fort Myers, again, after flooding during Helene. So it just depends on exactly where in the cone this center tracks, but the threat is significant. Again, on the entire west coast of Florida, evacuation orders are going to be the order of the day, today and tomorrow, and then everybody needs to be in their place, and then we'll see what happens on Wednesday. The model's going down the cone, as you would expect here. This is the key thing here. Look at this. This is that loop current that we talked about in Helene, where it's like extra energy for the hurricane as it moves over that. Then we'll just see what we have left. We expect an expanding storm at that point. The consensus is not down the middle of the cone as normal. The Hurricane Center's analysis is that the lines, the spaghetti lines, are too far south. So that's why they have the cone a little farther north. We'll see. All this is going to get fine-tuned, plus or minus, here as we go through today and tomorrow. The GFS models, we don't have the European uncertainty models until the storm crosses this line here. But notice they're kind of to the left of the cone. So we'll see. The idea is what the cone means, is that we're not sure about exactly where it's going to go. In terms of timing, though, notice that some move it faster and some move it slower. So we're saying Wednesday evening, but yes, could be Wednesday afternoon. Yes, it could be later overnight. So what's going on here? Here's the dry air up to the north, and here are the strong winds up here. The fact that this has dipped farther south away from those winds has allowed it to intensify, and now moving up into the cone. And this is where all this dry air and the stronger winds are going to come into play as we get closer. Here you see that other low pressure system over in here. It's going to move out of the way. Watch the dry air. The browns are the dry air. There's the hurricane. Okay, let's go forward in time here. This is today. Now let's going to move on up to Wednesday afternoon. And here, what do you see here? Well, we see the dry air wrapping in, part of that weakening process that is forecast. We also notice the very strong dark greens up here. This is where the strongest thunderstorms are going to be because of those strong upper level winds that we talked about, essentially energizing the north part of the storm. So strong winds, very heavy rain, flooding rain up there, and then we're going to watch for possibility of storm surge as well on that northern side. On the southern side, the storm expands out. So now we have storm surge threats all the way down the coast. In the Keys, maybe 1 to 3 feet of water rise. On the southeast coast, gusty winds Wednesday into Thursday, but no significant storm surge threat. Maybe some water rise south to north Wednesday night into Thursday. There are those strong upper level winds we talked about to help weaken the storm, but expand it out, which just widens the storm surge threat. Ari, there's just so much to talk about, but the bottom line is that evacuation orders are being issued. Evacuations are made for storm surge. They don't want people cut off. They don't want people to drown, obviously, in their homes, and all that is going to be a possibility. So the evacuation order is really the most important information that people can get for their local area right now.
Yeah, we have to prepare for the worst, that's for sure. And who knows, maybe in the Tampa area, maybe we get lucky. Maybe the storm goes a little farther toward the south. And then, of course, that's a worse situation for Fort Myers. But, you know, there are a lot of different possibilities that still could happen. But I'm glad people are preparing for the worst. That is Brian Norcross, our hurricane expert. Thank you so much. All right, coming up after the break, we're going to dive back into Milton's forecast even more. Talk, in detail about who could see the worst storm surge. We're also going to talk to a lot of local officials from some of these different spots along the western Florida coast. Not only spots that were not terribly badly affected by Helene, but also spots that really took a nasty hit from Helene and are still cleaning up. More coming up right after the break.
Do you have an invention idea,
Introducing Gemini for Google Workspace, AI that analyzes your data and adds industry insights, helping identify new opportunities tailored to your business. Get your own research analyst with Gemini for Google Workspace.
Hi, I'm stylist Mimi Cottrell. Let's talk shoe trends for fall. Animal print is an additive to make any outfit fun and quirky, from runways to retail. I really like the ballet flat for this season because it's not only comfortable and feminine, I think it elevates any look, and it's also very professional. Court sneakers are everywhere this season. What I love about court sneakers is the range of colors. Every girl should already have them in their closet. Find the trend that inspires you at DSW.
Does your student loan payment make you cringe? By refinancing to a lower rate through Credible.com, you could drastically cut your monthly payments. At Credible, you get personalized rates from multiple lenders. Visit Credible.com now to see your new monthly student loan payment.
FoxNews.com just got a little better. We're still the go-to for politics, breaking news, but we've got so much more. Sports, entertainment, lifestyle. FoxNews.com, bringing you the world according to Fox.
I'm Dr. Michael Baden. I have performed more than 20,000 autopsies.
We really thought this was going to be a straightforward case. Then we get the autopsy report back.
The answers are there. You just have to know what to look for.
The Baden Files, streaming now on Fox Nation.
Tubi is proud to be free for the teachers illuminating the minds of our children. But it's also free for kids who skip class to throw rocks at windows. Because Tubi is free for everyone, and we mean everyone.
A lot of storms are forecast in the Atlantic.
Nobody is bigger. Nobody is better. We are the weather experts.
This could be a storm of epic proportions.
Fox Weather is Hurricane HQ.
126, first on the scene.
We're looking at the worst mass casualty event in the history of Texas.
This season of 911 Lone Star
Can you hear me?
is
Get back!
off the rails.
You ready?
I was born ready. And you can watch anytime.
Who does she think she is, Laura Croft?
Police, put your hands up! Every Monday, it's all new.
Hang on!
Welcome to the party, Captain.
We'll be ready.
911 Lone Star, all new Mondays on Fox, or watch anytime on Hulu.
Since the devastation of October 7th, Black Saturday, I've been on the ground reporting on the raw realities of this war firsthand. Everyone down? From firsthand interviews with families and much more. These
I'd urge Floridians to take this storm very seriously. Do not get wedded to the cone. If you're on the west coast of the Florida Peninsula, you could potentially have major impacts from this storm.
Yeah, so this is going to be a very, very big deal. You heard Florida Governor Ron DeSantis there urging people to be ready across the state. Now, today's forecast cone, it's not going to look the same tomorrow. It's gradually going to get thinner and thinner, meaning higher and higher confidence as far as where the center of that storm is going to go. And let me tell you guys, where the center of the storm goes is going to be absolutely critical. If it goes a little bit north of Tampa Bay, probably catastrophic storm surge into Tampa Bay that we haven't seen in the modern era. If it goes a little farther toward the south, we'd have some really bad storm surge in places like Fort Myers. It's going to be a more compact storm than Helene, and we're going to be covering it from all angles throughout the next several days. This is going to be a big problem for a lot of people. While Hurricane Milton heads towards Florida, North Carolina enters its second weekend of recovery after Helene. It's now day 10. More than 115 people dead, hundreds missing, and more than 130,000 people remain without power across the state. Let's bring in Griff Jenkins, Fox News national correspondent. Griff, as I understand it, you are in Swannanoa, North Carolina. It's a little bit east of Asheville. And today marks day 10 of recovery. How is the recovery going? Of course, it's just getting started, right?
It's just getting started, Ari, and it's going to be weeks, if not months, maybe even years for the victims of this once-in-a-generation storm. Ari, the magnitude of destruction in western North Carolina and places like Swannanoa is difficult to convey through a television set, but allow me to try. What once stood here was a business that washed away. You can see ripped from its foundations, this pipe extending here, and then you see this car buried in where auto repair shop once stood. We'll bring you a little deeper in here and you can see what happened, because the Swannanoa River was just here behind me, crested at more than 25 feet, but you can see what it did here to this shop. And then if you look, as we look at all this debris, things that's going to have to be cleared, you can look down the river, you can see not only the path of destruction that Helene caused, but tents that were set up that were initially some residents that had nowhere to go. We see people in official jackets over there. Not sure exactly who they're responding from, but they've been bringing in stuff. And far in the distance, people with chainsaws trying to start clear the debris. It's volunteers, it's people in the community helping other people, and we've got FEMA on the ground. And of course, the 82nd Airborne continues to mobilize. But in some communities we visited, Ari, they have been entirely cut off from civilization for this entire 10-day period. We flew in there exclusively on a Black Hawk helicopter with Samaritan's Purse and spoke to some of the victims. Here's what they told us, Ari.
I've been so nervous I couldn't do nothing. It makes me feel sick. I mean, it just, we've been in here was blocked.
And I've had people that climb in the machine with me crying and thanking us because they said they thought they'd never see another person again.
We heard today, Ari, from Governor Kupu, who reassured people of western North Carolina that help is coming. And you can see how much work is going to have to be done when they can finally get the cranes and heavy equipment in here to start clearing this stuff up. But a really interesting thing, and we've heard a lot about the criticism of the government, it was initially the private companies like Samaritans that we flew with that were responding earlier. And just before we went on the air, it was an interesting moment. An Army Chinook helicopter flew over our head as a private helicopter crossed going a different direction. So it's all hands on deck 10 days after this storm as people try and pick up the pieces and deal with what is a mess. Ari?
Hey, Griff, I've been watching this story pretty much nonstop ever since it happened, but I've been watching it on a TV. Can you explain how jarring it is to actually be there and see that kind of damage in person?
Absolutely, and that's why I said at the top, it's hard to convey. The first hurricane I covered, Ari, was Katrina in 2005. And while that was a different sort of event because of the water we were dealing with in New Orleans, it is the river damage that was done here. But then also, you don't think of hurricanes hitting mountains. But that happened in the areas I just described, being cut off from civilization. It was the wind that whipped in the small rivers and creeks that compounded to deliver a devastating result that people have never seen in some of these parts. And that's why we were flying in with the Samaritan's Purse, but they were taking in SpaceX Starlinks units to get people who've been cut off from civilization back online. Obviously, they have no power. Many places lacking food, fire stations, and churches that needed to get back in contact. But, you really start coming over here, and I'll give you one last last look here, you can see this kind of damage doesn't usually happen so far from where a hurricane made landfall in Florida here in western North Carolina. And for this river to come so far that it went more than 2/3 of the way up on this building and cause this damage, this goes on for miles up and down the Shenandoah River, and down in the distance you can see them working on the bridge. This is the kind of destruction you see in storms that you normally don't see in storms that come through here, Ari.
Well, thank you so much for the report. That is Griff Jenkins, Fox News national correspondent. Appreciate it. All right, let's talk about Milton again. I know this is going to be the big story here over the next few days. Man, this has the potential to be very catastrophic, guys. This is some video out of St. Pete Beach. That's on the west side of the Tampa Bay area. It's kind of a barrier island type of setup there, and they got absolutely slammed by the storm surge from Helene. Now, if this particular storm, Milton, if it wants to jog just a little bit north of Tampa Bay, which is a very, very real possibility, we're going to see storm surge, you know, up to maybe close to double the amount of storm surge that they saw in that area. So that's going to be a really important thing to watch here. Here's the latest on Milton. It's still a Category 5 hurricane, by the way. If you blinked, or maybe you're just joining us for the first time today after signing off last night or early on this morning, boy, things really escalated in a hurry here. This storm was a 100-mile-per-hour storm at 5 a.m., and now it is a 160-mile-per-hour storm. Very rare that we see this level of rapid intensification, right? I think back to 2005, Hurricane Wilma, 2007, there was one in the Caribbean, Hurricane Felix, but you've got to go back a long time to find one that has strengthened this quickly. Look at the visible satellite on this. This is about as well put together of a hurricane as you will ever see, and of course the most important part is, what is it going to do? Well, the forecast cone, which is again telling us where could the center of the storm go, which exact track is it going to take, there are still a lot of possibilities. Long story short, the worst case scenario for Tampa Bay is if it wants to go just north of the Bay Area. In that case, of course, with the counterclockwise spin, you would have all this water pushed into here. You'd have the worst of the storm surge. That's kind of going to be the crux of this as far as the Tampa area goes. Is it going to go a little bit north? Is it going to go a little bit farther toward the south? How is this going to work out? Again, if it goes a little bit farther toward the south, then it would be a worse situation for Fort Myers. Either way, there's going to be big-time wind, a whole lot of rain, flooding, and somebody is going to get some devastating storm surge. All right, now let's check out today's weather warning update sponsored by Realtor.com. We still have some flooding going on along the southeast coast, and that is related to Helene. It's from all the rain that fell in the inland areas. It's been draining out toward the ocean, and along that southeast coast, some of the rivers have been swelling up, and so we've got flooding going on there, river flooding. Obviously, we've got the hurricane watches in effect for parts of Florida. That's a big deal. Honestly, the rest of the country really doesn't look that bad. We do have some excessive heat warnings down in the southwest, heat advisories in parts of the west as well, but the middle part of the country, there's really not much as far as any precipitation goes. The big story, of course, is going to be Hurricane Milton barreling into Florida late Wednesday.
Today's weather warning update is sponsored by Realtor.com. Get the
Mike Huckabee here, and like millions of other hardworking Americans, I couldn't fall asleep. My mind.
This is the greatest sleep innovation ever created. It's the patented Gel Flex Grid inside every Purple mattress. Only Purple passes the raw egg test because only Purple cradles your body and simultaneously supports it. Memory foam doesn't come close. Purple conforms to relieve pressure from hips and shoulders while supporting your spine and instantly adapts no matter your position. Sleep on a Purple risk-free for 100 nights. Buy more, save more. Up to $600 off. Visit purple.com or a store near you.
126, first on the scene.
This season of 911 Lone Star is off the rails, and you can watch anytime.
Hang on! Welcome to the party, Captain. We'll be ready.
911 Lone Star, only Mondays on Fox, or watch anytime on Hulu.
Since the devastation of October 7th, Black Saturday, I've been on the ground reporting on the raw realities of this war firsthand. Everyone down? From firsthand interviews with families and much more, these are my stories.
America is at a crisis point. For too long, the politicians, the media, and special interests have put themselves before the country.
Truths with Vivek Ramaswamy.
Don't put your hands on me! Oh!
Cops is back.
I was just pulling it out to show you.
You're not trying.
I wasn't running. I just missed my turn.
If you're not lying.
When somebody assaults me in the spirit with a demon?
Cops. New episode Friday on Fox Nation.
Does your student loan payment make you cringe? We get it. Saying goodbye to that much money every month can be tough, but by refinancing to a lower rate through Credible.com, you could drastically cut your monthly payments. At Credible, you get personalized rates from multiple lenders, so it's easy to find the refi that puts the most cash back in your pocket. And life with extra cash is, well, extra. Visit Credible.com now to see your new monthly student loan payment.
Why can't they protect that guy?
A Fox Nation exclusive. Jesse Waters investigates both assassination attempts on Donald Trump.
You had a rangefinder. Every one of the senior leadership should be held accountable.
A second assassination attempt.
We're compiling the subject's movements leading up to September 15th.
You haven't heard the full story like this.
Jesse Waters investigates the attempted assassinations of Donald Trump, only on Fox Nation.
You want to be a lifeguard? This is the real deal.
Rescue High Surf is the hottest drama on TV. Go, go, go! And you can watch it anytime.
Welcome to the North Shore.
Rescue High Surf, all new Mondays on Fox and anytime on Hulu.
If you are not feeling comfortable, if your home is not safe to live in, it's good to find another place to go, whether it's with friends or a hotel.
The path comes right over us, so I'm hoping it changes a little bit so we don't get all the rain, but we see what the constant rain can do. It just floods the area.
Mandatory evacuations are underway in Florida. The Tampa area really could end up right in the bullseye as Hurricane Milton rapidly intensified this morning. Life-threatening storm surge returning for millions of people. This has the potential to be a big disaster, one of the worst hurricanes that we've seen in modern history, depending on the exact track that it takes. It's a track, and I'm talking about Hurricane Milton, of course. Welcome back, by the way. I'm meteorologist Ari Sarsalari. The track that the storm takes is one that is a very infrequent track for hurricanes. The idea that we get a storm that forms in the western Gulf of Mexico, then takes kind of a west to east track toward Florida, not like it's never happened before, it's just extremely rare. That's the latest on Hurricane Milton right now. 160-mile-per-hour Category 5 storm. Now, I want to talk specifically about the Tampa Bay area, and even more specifically, some of these barrier islands on the west side of St. Petersburg, places like St. Pete Beach, Madeira Beach, which is actually where we have Mike Seidel right now, and I want to go out live to him. So, Mike, you were, I believe, weren't you out on St. Pete Beach? I'm trying to remember. We had so many different reporters out in different places. But how high did the water get during Helene, and how high could it get with this particular storm, given the worst-case scenario?
Ari, nothing official, but I was talking to locals yesterday, and they showed me where the water got on one of the buildings across the street about a block inland, and about 9 feet. It was probably higher here on the beach. In fact, this is the first time today we've been out on the beach. We thought we'd show it to you to see what it looks like. And yes, it was ravaged. You don't see a lot of debris or anything. Everything went inland, and they've had to scrape it up and pile it up. But notice the palm trees, their roots are showing. So a lot of sand has been picked up and was deposited, and you can see the mountains of sand in the parking lot here just off Gulf Boulevard. So it gives you an idea how much sand they lost here. It naturally will be replenished over time. Gulf of Mexico couldn't be quieter today. Boy, is that really going to change in the next day and a half to 2 days. By Wednesday, we're looking at a storm surge, Ari. They're saying 8 to 12 feet. Again, it's all about where the center comes on shore. But if it does 8 to 12 feet, that's the highest number, I believe, that the Weather Service has forecasted before for Tampa Bay. That would be utter disaster. That's worse than Helene. Clearwater got up to, I think, 8.6 feet on the gauge, and that was their record of recent memory. But I want to show you these buildings, these condos, where a lot of folks live or vacation. These are built for hurricanes. And if you look around, Ben will go in a little bit tighter here. There are no windows blown out. The roof is fine. It's those clay roofs. And as far as the eye can see, You know, they look livable, and they most likely are, unless some water got blown in through the windows, except on the lower floor. Now, this lower floor is up a little bit, but it definitely got water on the lower floor, as well as some of these other condos and apartments looking down the beach. Looks like that pier in the distance. I'm not sure, not speaking from fact, but you see the pylon, the poles, the telephone poles in the water, and you don't see the pier. So part of that may have been taken out by the surge from Helene just 11 days ago. So we're looking at another big surge coming in. The thing that is at least, what's the word, makes me a little bit happy is the fact that the forecast from the Hurricane Center weakens this to a Cat 3. So it takes it from where it is now, 160 miles an hour, down to a 125 Cat 3 at landfall Wednesday evening. That'll help us in the wind department. But as far as surge, probably not so, because when a hurricane weakens, the wind field expands. That'll mean probably the surge certainly down the coast, Fort Myers, Naples, Marco, some of the areas that had issues with Helene, maybe a higher surge than this time around. And we're going to have the surge here. No matter what, there's going to be a storm surge. Does it get to 12 feet? Remains to be seen. But it certainly is going to be another devastating hit. And if it comes right into Tampa Bay, it will be the first direct hit in over 100 years. So, Ari, a lot on the table. All we can hope for is that shear kicks in earlier and starts to tear apart at the storm as it comes our way on Wednesday, later Wednesday and Wednesday night.
Yeah, Mike, what's the best case scenario for the Tampa Bay area? And in that best case scenario, or I guess least bad scenario is what we should call it, you know, what kind of storm surge do we end up with? Let's say it takes a track a pretty decent amount to the south. What ends up happening? How does that pan out?
Well, if you look at the forecast now, areas north of where the Hurricane Center says it's going to come in, they have a surge of 5 to 10 feet up through the Nature Coast, up to Cedar Key. Remember, Cedar Key set a record with 9 feet with Helene. So even if it comes into the south of Tampa Bay, we're still going to have a surge coming in ahead of the storm. And then what happens, the wind goes offshore as it makes landfall and then blows the water out. So I don't see how we're going to get around a surge, I would say, as maybe as serious as it was before. Hopefully not. We'll see what happens. Maybe this year eats away at it sooner. I mean, we've seen intensity forecasts are not, you know, they're not exact. They're not perfect by any means. Track forecasting has gotten better. Intensity forecasts, not so much in recent memory. So we'll see what happens. I mean, the thing just blew up explosively, but we've seen hurricanes that wind down pretty quickly too. That's what we hope and pray for the folks here in the west coast of Florida who just dealt with Helene 11 days ago. I've never seen this happen before. I mentioned earlier, Ari, back in 2004, that very busy season with 4 landfalls in Florida, we had Francis. I remember being on the Intercoastal, West Palm Beach and Palm Beach, Labor Day weekend. That came in and ended up coming in to Hutchinson Island, which is up around Stuart, Florida. And then 25 days later, we had Jean, another hurricane, that came in and hit the same location, 25 days apart. Now, in this case, Helene did not make a landfall here. It made a landfall up in the Big Bend. So it's not really apples and apples, but it does give you an idea of how rare it is to have an area impacted by 2 major hurricanes, although maybe not a landfall, 2 major hurricanes less than 2 weeks apart.
And, you know, the other thing with the storm surge situation is I feel like if it goes south, you know, it's not just a perfect north to south coastline, right? You know, you've got inlets and things like that. You got to think about kind of the eastern sides of some of these barrier islands and things like that. So it's a very nuanced situation, and some great info there from a very experienced man who's been in a lot of storms. Thanks a lot for the report there, Mike. Seidel, we'll check back in with you in just a little bit.
And we're going to stress it and we're going to keep preaching it to evacuate. There's no need to stay in your house, especially now that the damage has been done once. There's really not much more you can do, so it's just better to leave the area, seek a shelter, and ride the storm out.
You want to talk about rapid intensification? We have some breaking news here. The Hurricane Center now says that this storm, Hurricane Milton, has maximum sustained winds of 175 miles per hour. that really is jaw-dropping. Not like we've never seen a storm with 175-mile-per-hour winds before, but the idea that at 5 a.m. this morning, it was a 100-mile-per-hour storm, and now it's up to 175 miles per hour. That is absolutely explosive, rapid intensification. Unbelievable. So not something you see every day. It's a very compact storm right now. This is something you'll see more often with storms this size, right? This is a young storm. It's a young, very healthy storm. It's really gotten its act together. It's gotten into just the right spot in the atmosphere where things are really perfect for it to strengthen a whole lot. It's not going to be this strength at landfall. It is going to weaken some, but again, when it weakens, that will make the size of the storm get a little bit bigger. It makes the surge worse, even though the wind situation improves a little bit. Right now, it's just really just an awe of meteorology to look down at this. It's unbelievable. Let's take a look at the visible satellite here to see what this looks like. And again, I'm just seeing this for the first time since the storm got upgraded to 175-mile-per-hour one, and my goodness, you probably will never see. It's very rare to see a hurricane that's more well put together than this, right? That is truly unbelievable when you look at the eye of that thing. Thinking about how unorganized it looked earlier on this morning and now seeing how it's just a perfect textbook example of a high-end hurricane. You know, we can look at the satellite all we want here, but, you know, at the end of the day, the most important thing is how is this going to affect people? And you know, again, I wish I could be a lot more specific with this, but there are a lot of different scenarios that still could pan out. You've got to keep in mind with this forecast cone, this doesn't mean that for sure the center of the cone is where the center of the storm goes, and then this is the whole area that gets the impacts and nobody outside of the cone gets any impacts. That's the incorrect way to read the cone. The forecast cone is telling us this is the entire area of uncertainty as far as where the center of the storm could go. The center of the storm could go down here close to Fort Myers. It could go up closer to Cedar Key. It could go right through Tampa Bay. Of course, the worst case scenario for Tampa Bay would be if the storm went just north of Tampa Bay, because that would bring in the big surge there. And you get the idea. Basically, the worst of the surge is going to be on the south side of the storm, and whoever's the closest to the center is going to get the strongest of the wind. And then, of course, it's going to move inland. It's going to move all the way across the Florida Peninsula, end up off the southeast coast. And as it moves across Florida, it's going to be a buzzsaw. I mean, even if it weakens from the Category 5, we're talking a Category 2 to 3 storm at least. So this is going to be a really big deal. It has the potential to be a huge disaster. All right, so start making your preparations, guys, if you live along the west coast of Florida and really through the entire Florida Peninsula. Places like Atlanta, or not Atlanta, Orlando, I should say. Orlando, be prepared for this. This is a live view at Tampa right now, by the way. We've got some clouds. And boy, the conditions are going to deteriorate pretty quickly on Wednesday. We've got a little bit of time to prepare here. All right, time to get ready. We'll be right back after the break.
Stay tuned to get
of business and will remain closed Tuesday, October the 8th through Friday, October the 11th. As of today, all parks are closed until further notice. The GT Bray Recreation Center and the Walton Racket Center will be closed starting Tuesday, October 8th. Our facilities will be reopened once conditions are safe to do so. As you and your family are making your final preparations, please take a moment and check on your neighbors. especially those who are elderly or have mobility issues. Make sure they have a plan for riding out the storm safely, and if not, they can dial 311 for transport to one of our shelters. Please continue to monitor local news and weather broadcasts, as well as the county's social media accounts for updates. All of our official storm updates can be found at our website at mymanatee.org/storm, and you can call 311 with any questions. Are there any questions?
Yeah, for those people maybe not in the evacuation zones that are chosen to ride up the storm, maybe they live more inland, they get in a situation with various suggestions for those people that find themselves in something that they just can't handle anymore?
If it's an emergent situation, dial 911. If it's safe to do so, our responders will come out to you. If it's a general question, dial 311.
Also, this one coming straight at us now, a Cat 5. I mean, this is something that this area has not seen directly coming right from the Gulf, right towards us. A lot of people are scared of Murray. Words of encouragement or...
I would say our teams have been working around the clock, really since Helene. There are sandbag locations. We are opening as many shelters right now. We are prepared to open more if the need arises. There are a lot of resources out there. Our website, mymanatee.org/storm, 311. If they would like to go further in their searches, you can look at the Florida Division of Emergency Management's webpage. There's a lot of helpful tips that are out there, but know your zone. If you're not in a flood zone, if you're not in a level A, B, or C, you run from the water, you hide from the wind. So go to our website, look at the readiness and preparedness tips, and again, with any questions, you can always dial 311.
And for all those communities that just got devastated a little over a week ago from Helene, what are the words for those communities?
I don't know that there are the correct words. I know that they've suffered a devastating loss, and unfortunately, this storm is coming right at us again. If you've been able to salvage items from your home and you find yourself in need of sheltering, we can provide shelter. But make sure that you've registered with FEMA for your FEMA assistance. Make sure that you have registered with Hope Florida if you needed housing assistance. Those efforts are not going to stop, and then more assistance will be available following this disaster. So help is out there, but just be safe. Above all else, be safe. The schools are considered hurricane-hardened buildings, so they are built to withstand Category 5 storms. They are built so that people can go to be safe. I will say a shelter is a lifeboat. So really, if you have a plan which you can go to a friend or a family member's house, but our schools, as every school is constructed and they stand up to be a hurricane shelter, they have the experts that are assisting with all of the hardening that they possibly can for the schools. All right, thank you.
All right, everyone, you are watching live now from Fox. That was Manatee County giving the latest updates. And we'll come back in just 2 minutes. I got some more updates regarding this massive hurricane, Category 5 Hurricane Milton right now. We have new wind speeds here that are really, really concerning, and new updates for warnings that include Orlando coming later this week. So we'll break it down for you coming up next on Live Now from Fox. Be back in 2. Fox. I'm your host, Mike Pace. Always great to be with you as we continue to track the massive Hurricane Milton, Category 5 storm right now. I do want to show you the latest radar that we can see in the latest track that we are looking at right now. This is really concerning as Milton has intensified very fast to a Category 5 storm. And there are current of hurricane watches in Florida that are expanding to include Orlando as well. Mandatory evacuations are underway across the west coast of Florida as millions of residents prepare for life-threatening impacts from Hurricane Milton, which continue to rapidly intensify over the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico and strengthen into a powerful Category 5 storm with winds right now at more than 170 miles per hour. The situation is becoming more dire in Florida, with state and local officials warning residents that the time to prepare for the life-threatening storm is running out, saying people near the coast of living are in low-lying areas need to get out before the storm approaches and brings with it potentially deadly storm surge that could reach up to 12 feet in some spots, including Tampa Bay. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis already placed 51 of the state's 67 counties under a state of emergency. And earlier today, President Joe Biden approved the state's pre-landfall emergency declaration request, which now authorizes the Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Emergency Management Agency to coordinate all disaster relief efforts and to provide appropriate assistance for required emergency measures. The first alerts were posted along Florida's Gulf Coast early today, and those have since expanded to include more areas of Central Florida, including the Orlando area. As Hurricane Milton approaches, those alerts are likely to expand once again and include more areas closer to the east coast of the state. Hurricane watches stretch from along the Florida Gulf Coast to areas including Tampa Bay. Tropical storm watches are also in effect for the Florida Keys, as well from Flamingo and north of the mouth of the Indian Pass area. Storm surge watches have also posted for a majority of Florida's Gulf Coast region, including Tampa Bay. The current storm surge forecast for Tampa Bay is between 8 and 12 feet if the peak surge coincides with high tide. This is notably higher than during Helene, when Tampa saw 7 to 8 feet of storm surge. The deepest water will occur along the immediate coast near and to the south of the landfall location, where the surge will be accompanied by large and dangerous waves, the National Hurricane Center warned. Charlotte Harbor is expected to see a storm surge of 5 to 10 feet, while Bonita Beach could see a surge of 4 to 7 feet. Hurricane Milton right now is located more than 730 miles southwest of Tampa, Florida, and has maximum sustained winds right now of 170 miles per hour, making it a very, very dangerous Category 5 hurricane. Milton is moving off to the east-southeast at 9 miles per hour. The National Hurricane Center says Hurricane Milton is moving off to the east-southeast, and that general motion is expected to continue through at least tonight. After that, the National Hurricane Center said Hurricane Milton should make a turn to the east and then northeast tomorrow and Wednesday. On that forecast track, Hurricane Milton is expected to move near or just north of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula today and tomorrow, then cross the eastern Gulf of Mexico and approach the west coast of the Florida Peninsula by Wednesday. So again, this is something that we are covering for you extensively on Live Now from Fox. We'll be giving you the latest updates from officials throughout the state of Florida. We already heard from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis once. We are expecting to hear from him again a little bit later today as this storm continues to make its way towards Florida. So stay right here with us on Live Now from Fox. We will have continuing coverage for you in the coming days as we get you ready for that landfall in Florida. Again, another look here at this massive storm, already a Category 5 storm. And I just want to kind of give you some different angles right now as we track this going towards Tampa and in the waters right now of the Gulf Coast there. So we'll be keeping an eye on it for you all right here on Live Now from Fox. That is going to do it for my time here on the desk. We are going to take a 2-minute break, and when we come back, my colleague Stephanie Quinu will be with you, guiding you through these alerts and updates with Hurricane Milton, a massive Category 5 storm. We'll be back in just 2 minutes on Live Now from Fox.
tie down or throw out. Make sure you clear the debris in your yards as best you can. I know it's tough because you don't want that stuff to become flying missiles. So we heed the evacuations. So we do have evacuations. Check out our website, 10 Tampa Bay, to find out and know your zone and if you should evacuate. And of course, we heed all of those evacuation warnings. Latest on Milton, a Category 5, but as I just texted my family, I said, it's going to be okay. Doesn't change anything in the forecast. I think it's peaking over the next 12 to 24 hours as a Cat 5, then likely as more of a Cat 2 or 3 as it moves toward the west coast of Florida. It should have a lot of wind shear that'll interact with it. but this is a powerhouse storm. So don't pay attention to really the cone or the category. And the storm track does matter, though. Every mile matters as far as that storm surge. We're going to take a look at that. But first things first, verifying a quieter Monday. And I think not only for our Monday, but most of tomorrow should be on the quieter side. Just a few scattered showers, temperatures in the 70s, because our storm is still 730 plus miles away. Okay, so there's Milton spinning around, and all along our weather team is saying if it takes its time getting here, which it looks like it is going to be a bit delayed until later Wednesday, overnight Wednesday night, and early Thursday, that would allow some of this wind shear. See how fast those clouds are moving across North Florida and the northern Gulf of Mexico? That'll interact with it. Try to get some dry air in toward that center to help at least maybe not only shift this thing a little farther south to impact fewer people, but weaken it a bit. Okay, so as we look at our forecast radar, doing a pretty good job showing you the next couple of days. We can take those storm preps, not only finish those up, take it seriously, right? And we take a look at our day on Tuesday, a few showers, but nothing too bad. It's Wednesday morning one week. So we're going to start to see those outer bands start to fill in across Tampa Bay, Pinellas, Pasco, Hillsborough County, and then notice the center of the storm making a move. So Milton's going to really make up its mind. Is it going to move a little farther north toward Hillsborough County and Pinellas, or will it stay a little farther south? And that turn that we're going to watch as meteorologists, is it going to turn a little farther north or south? Probably would not happen until late on Tuesday and Wednesday. So notice that's Thursday at 4 a.m. And then again, the big impacts again coming during the day, Wednesday afternoon through Wednesday night and Thursday morning. Here's all the tracks, but the spaghetti models, we showed you the two main tracks, and Milton again feeling that high pressure in that front to the north. So right now, I still favor track one and maybe a little farther south. I know most of the models are pointing toward us, but it just shows you things could still change, and that's the big thing, and that's why you want to keep checking in with us. We'll keep you informed, prepared, and connected, and on that 7-day forecast, we'll continue that weather impact alert all the way through Thursday. But Frank, we do have the backside of the storm. The better part as it moves out of the area, it looks like by Thursday afternoon, improving conditions and beautiful weather for the weekend. Okay, we've got 79 degrees here in Tampa. Dew point of 72, east-north winds about 13 miles per hour to the northeast. So things really start to pick up with the wind and the rain in this forecast. It looks like very late Tuesday night, and really especially Wednesday. I've really circled right around noon, 1 o'clock, where it's just going to be tough to get around here. So right now, this is a picture of peace we all need. And I know we have that little unsettled feeling, but hey, we all feel the same way. We're in this together, and we've got you, okay? We've got you. And we take a look outside. These clouds now will give way to a few scattered showers this afternoon, but not enough to slow you down. So things you can do right now. We're going to gas up, tarp up, check our kits, supplies. I've been checking my sports drinks. I need a little sports drink sometime. Staying hydrated. Charging the devices. I've charged the watch. Okay, stock the water, check. Protect the home. This is big because I think we'll have more flying debris than we normally see with these storms. Well, of course, because of what happened with Helene. So we've got stacks and stacks of stuff that we can hopefully tie down or throw out. Make sure you clear the debris in your yards as best you can. I know it's tough because you don't want that stuff to become flying missiles. So we heed the evacuations. So we do have evacuations. Check out our website, 10 Tampa Bay, to find out and know your zone and if you should evacuate. And of course, we heed all of those evacuation warnings. Latest on Milton, a Category 5, but as I just texted my family, I said, it's going to be okay. Doesn't change anything in the forecast. I think it's peaking over the next 12 to 24 hours as a Cat 5, then likely as more of a Cat 2 or 3 as it moves toward the west coast of Florida. It should have a lot of wind shear that will interact with it. But this is a powerhouse storm. So don't pay attention to really the cone or the category. And the storm track does matter, though. Every mile matters as far as that storm surge. We're going to take a look at that. But first things first, verifying a quieter Monday. And I think not only for our Monday, but most of tomorrow should be on the quieter side. Just a few scattered showers, temperatures in the 70s, because our storm is still 730 plus miles away. Okay, so there's Milton spinning around, and all along our weather team is saying if it takes its time getting here, which it looks like it is going to be a bit delayed until later Wednesday, overnight Wednesday night, and early Thursday, that would allow some of this wind shear. See how fast those clouds are moving across North Florida and the northern Gulf of Mexico? That'll interact with it. Try to get some dry air in toward that center to help at least maybe not only shift this thing a little farther south to impact fewer people, but weaken it a bit. Okay, so as we look at our forecast radar, doing a pretty good job showing you the next couple of days. We can take those storm preps, not only finish those up, take it seriously, right? And we take a look at our day on Tuesday, a few showers, but nothing too bad. It's Wednesday morning one week. So we're going to start to see those outer bands start to fill in across Tampa Bay, Pinellas, Pasco, Hillsborough County, and then notice the center of the storm making a move. So Milton's going to really make up its mind. Is it going to move a little farther north toward Hillsborough County and Pinellas, or will it stay a little farther south? And that turn that we're going to watch as meteorologists, is it going to turn a little farther north or south? Probably would not happen till late on Tuesday and Wednesday. So notice that's Thursday at 4 a.m. And then again, the big impacts again coming during the day, Wednesday afternoon through Wednesday night and Thursday morning. Here's all the tracks, but the spaghetti models, we've showed you the two main tracks, and Milton again feeling that high pressure in that front to the north. So right now, I still favor track one and maybe a little farther south. I know most of the models are pointing toward us, but it just shows you things could still change, and that's the big thing, and that's why you want to keep checking in with us. We'll keep you informed, prepared, and connected, and on that 7-day forecast, we'll continue that weather impact alert all the way through Thursday. But Frank, we do have the backside of the storm. The better part, as it moves out of the area, it looks like by Thursday afternoon, improving conditions and beautiful weather for the weekend. Okay, we've got 79 degrees here in Tampa. Dew point of 72, east-north winds about 13 miles per hour to the northeast. So things really start to pick up with the wind and the rain in this forecast. It looks like very late Tuesday night, and really especially Wednesday. I've really circled right around noon, 1 o'clock, where it's just going to be tough to get around here. So right now, this is a picture of peace we all need. And I know we have that little unsettled feeling, but hey, we all feel the same way. We're in this together, and we've got you, okay? We've got you. And we take a look outside. These clouds now will give way to a few scattered showers this afternoon, but not enough to slow you down. So things you can do right now. We're going to gas up, tarp up, check our kits, supplies. I've been checking my sports drinks. I need a little sports drink sometime. Staying hydrated. Charging the devices. I've charged the watch. Okay, stock the water, check. Protect the home. This is big because I think we'll have more flying debris than we normally see with these storms. Well, of course, because of what happened with Helene. So we've got stacks and stacks of stuff that we can hopefully tie down or throw out. Make sure you clear the debris in your yards as best you can. I know it's tough.
Make sure you follow us on X, Instagram at FLSERT, and on Facebook at FDEM, as we are sharing updates in real time. Please make sure that you have a way to receive alerts. Make sure that you see all the additional information at your county emergency management agency at floridadisaster.org/counties. And again, thank you, Governor, for your continued support and partnership.
Jared. All right, thank you, Governor, and good morning. We have continued to respond to Hurricane Helene and also ramp up our efforts to prepare for Hurricane Milton. To date, FDOT has removed nearly 180,000 cubic yards of debris statewide, and as you heard from Governor DeSantis, we've taken the mission of removing as much as debris as possible before Milton makes landfall very serious. We've mobilized every available state asset and resource to do just this. It's been a partnership between FDOT, DEM, Florida Department of Agriculture, the National Guard, and the State Guard. We have a lot of people on the ground. We have a lot of equipment on the ground. We have continued to remove debris. It is really important that everybody understand we're in this thing together. As you heard from the governor, we saw a lot of private property owners bringing debris to landfills throughout the night last night. We highly encourage that. Every little bit of debris that gets removed counts and gets us to our goal and helps us fulfill that mission. We are calling on all of our local governments, local municipalities, and debris vendors and contractors. If you have available resources and available assets, please deploy those. Join us, join state employees and our asset deployment of all of our equipment to remove debris in Pinellas, Manatee specifically, where they were hit hard by Helene. This is a very important mission. We're all in this together. We need everybody to mobilize their resources and assets. As you've heard from the governor, throughout the day yesterday, we moved a lot of debris. We're going to continue working until it's no longer safe to do so, and our goal, again, is to remove as much debris as we can possibly remove before Hurricane Milton makes landfall. As you heard from the governor, we are preparing to suspend tolls effective at 10:30 a.m. this morning for West Florida, Central Florida, and Alligator Alley to help facilitate those evacuations. We have seen people begin to leave already, which is a good thing. You need to leave early. If you're within those low-lying areas where storm surge could impact you, the earlier you leave, the better. It's going to help with traffic, it's going to help with evacuations, and it will make your trip a lot easier. We've seen increased volumes on I-75 and I-4. We're continuing to watch traffic live with our 10 regional traffic management centers across the state. They operate 24/7. We've increased the number and frequency of our Road Ranger Service Patrol and Motorist Aid to facilitate those evacuations. They do have the ability to aid motorists with fuel, water, and also remove stranded or idle vehicles out of the travelway. We've also prepared our shoulders for what we call emergency shoulder use. As volumes pick up and speeds lower for the interstate facilities, we then begin to implement what's known as emergency shoulder use, and we open up the shoulders of our interstates for live traffic. We do that when the speeds get down to around 40 miles per hour. We have a partnership with Florida Highway Patrol, and they go out there, the troopers go out there live, real time, and assist people in getting on the shoulder to help relieve congestion. We've used this in multiple storms. We used it for Hurricane Irma. We used it for Hurricane Ian. It was very successful, and so we're prepared and ready to do that as volumes continue to pick up. A lot of rain has already fallen across the state of Florida. The ground is saturated. More rain is anticipated to fall before Hurricane Milton makes landfall. So in terms of transportation, we are anticipating a vegetative debris event. We're ramping up our resources for cut and toss and clearing roads. We're preparing all of our drainage structures and drainage systems, cleaning those out. We encourage all of our local governments, our counties, local municipalities to do the same thing so that we can get roads back open as quickly as possible. We're watching very closely our bridges and low-lying roads in coastal areas, and also our bridges and low-lying roads around rivers, creeks, and streams inland with the amount of rainfall that's coming in. And we're going to be prepared to deploy damage assessment teams and effect emergency temporary repairs immediately after the storm passes through based on what we see and fine. We're staging generators for traffic signal power. We're staging pumps for potential flooding, and we're going to be ready to roll and ready to respond as soon as Hurricane Milton passes through. We're committing every possible and available resource to respond to this storm. We've had over 2,000 FDOT employees actively responding to Hurricane Helene. They're going to continue working through Hurricane Milton. We are committed to getting the job done, and we're going to make sure it happens. If you need information on traffic, fl511.com is the place to get traffic information. It is updated live, real time by our traffic management centers. A lot of times during emergency preparedness and response, the third-party navigation apps sometimes don't have all of the accurate information. fl511.com is the place to get traffic information. Thank you, Governor.
Okay, so we're ramping up. We've been ramping up all weekend. We've got a massive amount of resources that are have been mobilized, that are continue to be mobilized, including this debris mission, which we think is critical. I would also just say this is a storm. When these hurricanes make landfall, they obviously will weaken some. But it's projected to leave the Florida Peninsula on the east coast of Florida still as a hurricane. So it isn't like this is going to be something where it hits as a hurricane and ends up more of just a tropical system by the time it leaves the state. It's going to remain a hurricane at some level all the way through exiting on the east coast of Florida. And again, we don't have a guaranteed track in terms of where this thing's going to make landfall. You're talking about 50 miles north, 50 miles south. That'll make a huge difference in terms of where you have the most significant impacts, and there's just no way to know right now where exactly that's going to be. And so that's why anybody on the west coast of And then if you are in the path of this on the interior part of Florida, you're going to get some strong winds. It isn't like it's just going to be a rainstorm. I mean, all the way until it exits the state, it's going to be powerful. So please take the appropriate precautions. Listen to your local officials, and we'll get through this. We'll respond very quickly, but this does have the potential to have a lot of damage. Okay.
Governor, are you still anticipating this to be the largest evacuation since around 2017?
It's hard to know exactly. I mean, I think Irma, there was a lot of people that got on the road and then they had to go back and so there was, it was a little bit different, I think, situation here. Here we know that if you are in an area on the Florida Peninsula on the west coast of the state that is vulnerable to storm surge, you're likely going to be under some type of an evacuation order. Certainly anywhere in that center part of the state, west central Florida, as you get down to Bradenton, Sarasota, Charlotte, Pasco, all those areas are going to have evacuation orders for sure. So it is going to be a significant number of people. We'll see exactly how that shakes out, but it's a major issue because of we have a storm that could hit in different spots. I mean, that's just the reality that we're dealing with. I mean, if we knew exactly where it was going to hit, you probably would evacuate fewer people, but we don't know that. And as we saw with Hurricane Ian, there was a thought a couple days before it was going to hit one place. It ended up hitting much further south. So in this storm, even though a lot of the models track it somewhere in that Sarasota, Bradenton, Tampa Bay area right now, and maybe that's what ends up happening, it potentially could hit further north. It potentially could hit further south. So just knowing that and knowing the range of storm surge that you're dealing with, you're going to see a lot of evacuation orders.
No deaths were reported in Taylor County with Helene. The sheriff says this because everyone evacuated, those communities were leveled. Talk about the importance of people listening to those evacuation orders with this one.
Well, Taylor County had more storm surge than even is being predicted for this storm at this point. I mean, you had 15, maybe even 20 feet in some of those areas. So you had homes that withstood Hurricane Idalia, which was hit as a Category 3. It was a 4 in the water, and then it hit as a 3, and survived it fine. And then on Helene, they were totally wiped off the map. And that's all because of the storm surge. It is the winds were more with Helene than with Idalia, but not so much more that a house could go fine and then get obliterated. It was the storm surge. And when you get away from the storm surge, then you're going to be able to most likely ride out the storm and be safe. You hide from the wind and you run from the water. You can find structures in Florida that can withstand, even if you're in the path of the storm, that can withstand the wind. There's a lot of things in Florida that are built to be able to withstand major hurricane force winds. But you just can't contend with storm surge that is 10, 15 feet of storm surge. I mean, Kevin showed, this is a little bit over 10 feet, this room. So that's a significant thing, and you're just not going to be able to beat Mother Nature. So I think the reason why they had no fatalities is because the people that were in those areas that got whacked by the storm surge did get out. Now, we always have, and in Helene, we had storm fatalities attributed to the storm from, a tree can fall somewhere, you can have a traffic accident, you can have all that. That's just more likely to happen in more populated areas, and it's very unfortunate. And so some of those things can kind of just be freak occurrences with that. But the one thing that people can control is if you are in an area that is vulnerable to this surge, if you get out of there, the chance of you being able to ride this out and returning home safely is very, very high. If you stay in there and you got 10 feet, you're really taking a risk with your life and your safety.
There's a good picture of a whole field of bucket trucks and line crews ready to go to put power up. We don't have that right now, and it sounds like you said that the private.
No, they're being mobilized now. I mean, you think.
How many do we have pulled together so far?
Well, they're working with the companies, but we've been talking with them over the weekend. They understand, and so if you look at the path of the storm, Tampa Bay, you got Tico, you got a lot of Duke, and then to the extent it goes south of Tampa Bay across, you pretty much have FPL. And so, these are major engines. We do have some municipals. We do have some co-ops as well, but they did a lot with this. So that is happening. They are actively working to bring as many people in as possible. You're looking at probably not going to be able to do any restoration until Thursday morning. Would likely be as early as you're going to be able to do it, depending on, and it may even be later if the storm continues to move slower than anticipated. But they are all actively bringing people in. And I think you're going to continue to see more and more people brought into the state over the next few days.
Bring line workers in from the western United States because there's so much committed to the Carolinas after Helene. Is there a problem with just finding enough line workers now to come in and do that work?
Well, they are bringing people from further away from Florida than traditionally, because we still have hundreds of thousands of people without power in other parts of the country, other parts of the Southeast. So you do have a lot of people that are working in those areas. That's just the reality. I mean, they're not going to likely take someone off a job that's there and bring them back until that job is finished. But I do know, and I spoke with FPL personally, they're committed to bringing people in from where they need to be able to get the job done. But obviously, it's more challenging to do that when you just had a hurricane that knocked out power for. I mean, you still have hundreds of thousands of folks in, I think, the Carolinas and Georgia, but certainly North Carolina, that don't have power. Florida, we had a very rapid restoration, but that was not, I think, replicated in those states, and so you got a lot of people there. But if you got to bring them in from Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, all those places, they're going to do it. Obviously, we support the mutual aid from the emergency management perspective, and we'll continue to provide support for mutual aid. Pretty much all of our outfits at this point welcome the mutual aid. That wasn't true a few years ago. Now I think it is, and I think that there's a better posture overall for that. But you had a lot of power outages throughout the southeastern United States. That wasn't even 2 weeks ago. I mean, this hit Thursday, 2 weeks ago. I mean, so this is that is ongoing. And honestly, I think people, been through these storms recently in Florida. The norm is that people are without power for 3 weeks, a month, 5 weeks. I mean, that's the norm in these hurricanes. I think our efforts to really front load this and go quickly and working with the utilities that's not the norm in terms of how these things are going. So the fact that you still have people there is not surprising to me at all. But I'm glad that the mission here was completed in record time. I know that's going to be helpful for those. And if we hadn't have pre-staged before Helene, you could be in a situation where you're having massive restoration efforts still ongoing in the state of Florida just for Helene. So fortunately, that is 99.9% of that was complete, and we're ready for the next one.
Flex you're anticipating on elections, given that today's the last day to register to vote, or anything like that, Chiefs?
Not in terms of voter registration. I mean, people can register today, and then that's that. There's nothing inhibiting you registering today. The storm has not hit yet. Now, after the storm, we will see what damage is there, and if I have to do a similar executive order that I did in Ian and that I did for Helene, we're happy to do it, but we're not going to change any registration deadline. You can register today, and there's no reason to open that up.
One of the things that happened in Hurricane Irma was Governor.
Good morning. We're here at the State Emergency Operations Center. I'm joined by Kevin Guthrie, Florida Division of Emergency Management, Secretary Jared Perdue, Florida Department of Transportation, Major General John Haas from the Florida National Guard. Hurricane Milton, when we were here yesterday morning, said this is a tropical storm. Might become a hurricane yesterday, but probably by today, and it became a hurricane very quickly. And so not only is it a hurricane, it's already a major hurricane, and it's now a Category 4 hurricane with maximum sustained winds at 150 miles per hour. It is expected to make landfall on the west coast of Florida sometime between Wednesday evening or perhaps even very early on Thursday. This has gone slower than the projections were in terms of the how it's moving towards Florida. And if that continues, it's going to push back when landfall will happen. Of course, you can see impacts prior to the eye wall making landfall. We have made a pre-landfall declaration request to FEMA for support, and Kevin has been working with the administrator, and we anticipate positive approval on that. We have 51 counties in Florida currently under a state of emergency. The executive order that I signed over the weekend also orders all disaster debris management sites and landfills to be open 24/7 in the lead up to Hurricane Milton. We had a lot of debris left from Hurricane Helene on Florida's Gulf Coast. That creates a huge hazard if you have a major hurricane hit in that area this week. So we've marshaled state assets to be able to help with that mission, and we're going to continue to do that until it's safe, until it's no longer safe to do so. So we do have a Category 4 hurricane. It is currently located 745 miles southwest of Tampa. It has not moved terribly quickly, but that obviously could change going forward. Storm surge watch has been issued for the Florida Gulf Coast from mainland Monroe County northward to the Suwannee River, the Dixie-Levy County line. 8 to 12 feet peak storm surge is potential for northern Pinellas all the way down to Charlotte, including in Tampa Bay. 5 to 10 feet peak storm surge is possible from Yankeetown southward to the Pasco-Pinellas County line and from Englewood southward to Bonita Beach, including Charlotte Harbor. Hurricane watches have been issued for portions of west central Florida and Florida's Nature Coast. Tropical storm watches extend further south and north through southwest Florida and the Keys and along portions of the Florida Panhandle. Division of Emergency Management is busy facilitating hundreds of resource requests from communities as we prepare for the impacts. We've already sent major truckloads of food and water to Central Florida in preparation for points of distribution sites after the storm. We're also coordinating the deployment of more than 2,000 feet of flood protection systems and prioritizing critical infrastructure like hospitals, wastewater treatment facilities, and electrical infrastructure. We've deployed a flood barrier around a water pumping station in Bradenton, a fire station in Hillsborough, and more en route to the courthouse in Charlotte County, hospital in Kissimmee, master pump station in St. Pete, and a community resource center in Hernando County. We've also deployed generators to support special needs sheltering operations, and of course Starlink internet. All counties have access to that, and we're deploying more as needed. More than 200 ambulances and more than 30 paratransits are in Central Florida footprint, ready to support first responder operations. And as I previously noted, we've ramped up our support of debris removal. That's a 24/7 round-the-clock mission. The state of Florida is amassing significant amount of fuel reserves ahead of Milton, and we're staging it to be utilized as needed. These quantities include 415,000 gallons of diesel, 389,000 gallons of gasoline, and an additional 1.5 million gallons of both diesel and gasoline are currently en route. I know there's different things that are being said, but all fuel continues to arrive at Florida ports. There has not been an interruption of that. I know people are going to fill up their gas tanks, which is a good thing. There's more lines than maybe that we're used to on some of these, but there has not been an interruption in fuel deliveries, and all the ports are checked in on that. Local officials and their vendors must continue debris removal efforts for those areas that are in the potential path of this storm. My executive order requires debris landfill and dump sites to remain open 24/7 to accept debris from Hurricane Helene. We need as much of this debris picked up as possible. This creates a safety hazard, and it also will increase the damage that Milton could do with flying debris. All local entities should comply with this order and work around the clock to accomplish this mission. We have deployed major assets to help, but yet, last night in Pinellas County, there were 300 vehicles. Some of them were state vehicles, but also a lot of private pickup trucks and vehicles who were bringing debris. That's helpful. They should be doing that, and yet one of the gates was locked. There was no one manning it. And so we had this massive line of cars waiting to drop off debris, which is a good thing. And so Florida Highway Patrol basically took matters into their own hands, fastened some rope to a couple pickup trucks to the gate, and busted the gate open. And then those trucks were able to go in and unload the debris. We don't have time for bureaucracy and red tape. We have to get the job done. And the effort that Jared Perdue and Kevin's team have made in helping get the debris off and supplementing the local efforts has been incredible. We have noticed since the weekend in the order, you have seen some more vendors out there. I know City of St. Petersburg has been working hard to get the debris out, and that's a great thing. And they're working, I think, well. But these debris sites need to be open, and we're going to ensure that to be able to do. So just in the last 24 hours, the state has done almost 500 truckloads of debris, totaling 9,000 cubic yards. So that's just from the barrier islands in Pinellas County bringing to the debris landfills. We have over 200 state assets, dump trucks, other types of trucks and vehicles to be able to do. But keeping it 24/7 is important. We absolutely encourage private citizens to have the debris and bring it in. That's helping the mission. Can't get bogged down in bureaucracy on this. The debris mission is going to continue until it's no longer safe to do so. Clearly, we're going to be able to work all the way through today and probably all the way through tomorrow, given that the storm's likely not to make landfall till later on Wednesday, and that could even get pushed back even further. So we've made a big dent in this. I know folks on the ground locally in those barrier islands and places like Manatee and Pinellas have been working very hard. But let's get this done. Let's get as much of that debris removed as humanly possible, and let's work 24/7 to be able to do it. So we have right now, just in the debris mission, we have 800 National Guardsmen that are also deployed helping our state agencies. We currently have 5,000 Guardsmen that are mobilized for the response to this storm, and we have more than 3,000 additional Guardsmen who will be mobilized prior to landfall. The National Guard's also deploying heavy equipment to assist with debris removal, including Army and Air Force horizontal construction units, tactical high water vehicles, dump trucks, and front-end loaders. Linemen and power restoration resources are being marshaled in advance of the storm. This is a storm, the path of this storm that would hit the western part of the Florida Peninsula, then go all the way across the peninsula and exit in the Atlantic Ocean. That's going to impact a lot of different utilities. We've spoken to most of them, and they're working to get people here. You know, if you look, we had Helene, and there were 2.4 million restorations, but 99.9% were back within a few days. Yeah, there's still hundreds of thousands of people without power in some of these other states that got hit by Helene. So there are crews working there, but they're bringing people in from far and wide to be able to respond accordingly. This path of this storm, you know, we don't know exactly how it's going to go. I know they say the eye is going to go here or here. That can move. When you're talking about 30, 40, 50 miles north or south, will make a huge difference in terms of who gets the worst surge, how much power is ended up taken out. And so we have no way of knowing how that's going to shake out. So the resources are being brought in, and the power restoration effort will begin as soon as it's safe to do so. Again, I made this point yesterday, but all of our assets that we had lent to assist in North Carolina are here in the state of Florida. We have a temporary base camp at Tropicana Field to support not just the debris operations, but any post-landfall first responding operations. So we have landfall is going to happen probably sometime later Wednesday, maybe early Thursday, and it could potentially speed up, and so maybe it'll be a little earlier than that. It could continue slowing. Maybe it'll be a little less, but there is going to be a landfall in the middle of this week. Monday morning, where we are today, you have time to execute your plan, but you got to do it now. there have been some evacuations that have been issued. There's going to be a flurry of them today. I know the counties are working on opening shelters. They typically will open the shelters after they have the evacuation go out, not before. So make sure that you're following the news coming out of your local county. But all these barrier islands, all these areas that would be susceptible to this storm surge that's up and down the west coast of Florida, you should assume that there's going to be some form of evacuations that are going to be issued by your local county officials. That is going to happen when you have the potential for storm surge of this magnitude. We also have a storm that's already very powerful. Now, the forecasts are that it's going to peak before it reaches landfall, and then weaken. It's still going to be a strong storm. But, we don't know that that's necessarily going to happen. And so this is something that's going to be really, really significant one way or another. But you have time to be able to do this today. And again, you don't have to evacuate hundreds of miles. If you're in those barrier islands, if you're in areas that are susceptible to storm surge, you go to areas that are not susceptible to that. Every county has places within them where you can go to. Maybe it's a friend's house, maybe it's a hotel, maybe it's a shelter. We have the ability to withstand wind in Florida with most of our buildings, and nothing would be designated as a shelter if it couldn't withstand that. So that's an option, especially if you're not comfortable getting on the road and traveling a great distance. You don't have to do that. And you're going to see shelters open in all these counties. Kevin is working on supplementing that from the state if there's a need to have more, particularly in Central Florida. So we'll do that. But you have an opportunity today to do what you need to do to execute this plan. You have time today, but do it. But time is going to start running out very, very soon. We are effective at 10:30 a.m. We are suspending all tolls in western part of Central Florida into Central Florida as well as Alligator Alley. People sometimes will say, where do you evacuate to? They just want to get out. They don't want to just stay local, and they want to get out. Well, I think that probably the easiest route would probably be to go north if you're in Central Florida, because the way the storm looks, it looks like it's going to have more of an impact on Central and Southern Florida. Most of these places in Tallahassee and Northern Florida likely aren't going to see as significant of impacts, but be that as it may, just understand that if they have a storm going into the greater Tampa Bay area now, it is possible that that could shift further south. So if you do evacuate south, you may be ending up going to where you're going to have a lot of the storm anyways. We saw that with Hurricane Ian, so just be mindful of that. But again, you don't have to go hundreds of miles. That is not required. Any place that's going to be open as a shelter, Florida hotels that are built within the last however many 20, 30 years are all going to be able to withstand hurricane force winds. Sandbag locations are open in multiple counties in South and Central Florida. Check your county's EM page to find out where those locations are. You can find your county's emergency management page by going to floridadisaster.org/counties. floridadisaster.org/counties, and you have that local EM page that will tell you about any local evacuation orders that are made. But know your zone, know where you are. The bad thing about having a storm right on top is we have these logistical challenges. The one thing people have with Helene, they know if they got a lot of storm surge with Helene, very well may get even more with this storm. So don't mess with the storm surge and do what you need to do to keep yourself and your family safe. We're going to be continuing to work around the clock here at the Emergency Operations Center. We're doing all the things that we would normally do, but then obviously we have this debris removal mission that we've dived into to be able to help these local communities that have all this. It's going well, but we need to keep doing on that. Okay, Kevin Guthrie will come up and give an update.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you for once again supporting the division, the State Emergency Response Team, as we respond to Hurricane Milton. The State Emergency Response Team continues to work on more than 600 mission requests received from our counties. Residents should begin finalizing your disaster plans, and if your plan calls for you to evacuate, you should do so today. Many of the counties are going to issue their evacuation orders today. Some of them, for example, Pasco County, will start at 10 a.m. this morning. Others will be Pinellas County, I believe, at 2 p.m. this afternoon. And still others will have varying times. You may ask why the varying times. Each county's population is factored into that, so the clearance times is what they will be making those decisions based on. So those evacuation orders will be going out today. I would highly recommend, if anybody has the means to do so, you have the capability of going to a hotel, staying with friends and families, get on the road today, wherever that might be. There's hoteling in Orlando. If you are 100% going to need to be dependent on power and you have the means to do so, you may want to consider a Jacksonville. It's likely that Jacksonville will not experience any type of power outage. So if you've got to be guaranteed power and you have the financial means, you may want to consider something a little bit further away. However, for those that do not, shelters will be opening. We recommend that you start moving towards a shelter. Shelter capacity will be limited. You heard the governor say that we are going to work on supplemental sheltering. We have identified state buildings. We have identified vacant buildings across the entire footprint of Florida that we will be opening up additional shelters when school buildings and other shelters, traditional shelters, start to reach their capacity. Many of you may need to resupply your disaster supply kit. Again, that is a today thing. You need to be doing that today. If you get to a shelter, there will be food and water there. It will not be sit down eating. It will be shelf stable meals. It would be more of the type of material or food that you're used to seeing at a point of distribution, but we will have food and water. If you have access for functional needs and have not registered with the Florida Special Needs Registry, you need to do that this morning. They've already started, cities and counties have already started call downs of their special needs registry to ensure that those individuals have a ride to the closest special needs shelter. If you depend on medication or electricity to use your medical devices, your area is called to evacuate, you need to do so. You may lose power and there will be no way to use your medical devices. Make sure that's a part of your plan. The National Hurricane Center released new storm surge values as of 8 a.m. this morning. They issued a special advisory at 9 that the governor's already talked about, where the hurricane force winds are now Category 4. However, I'm going to draw your attention to something we did for you this morning. Everybody likes visuals. 5 feet and 10 feet. The ceiling in here is 10'8". We're talking about storm surge values higher than the ceiling. Please, if you're in the Tampa Bay area, you need to evacuate. If they have called for your evacuation order, I beg you, I implore you to evacuate. Drowning deaths due to storm surge are 100% preventable if you leave. We had situations where people died of drowning in Hurricane Ian. Had they just gone across the bridge from Estero Bay, Sanibel Island, and so on, just across the bridge to the first available shelter that had capacity, they'd still be alive today. Please remember that counties will call for these evacuation orders, and we will likely be seeing those today, as I've already mentioned. If you need to evacuate, we want you to evacuate out, not up. After I made the comment last night, my brother-in-law called me and said, in fact, for Hurricane Helene, we have 380 elevators that are not working in the greater Tampa Bay area. Elevators are going to go down. You're not going to be able to get down the elevators. If you are dependent on elevator usage versus stairs, you need to make that a part of your evacuation plan. If you cannot get down those stairs, you need to evacuate. Evacuate out, not up. You can visit floridadisaster.org/no to determine if you live in an evacuation zone. Your gas tank and electric vehicle only need to be halfway full. Get the gas, get as much as you need to get to where you're going. If you're in an evacuation zone, you need evacuation assistance, please call this number, 1-800-729-3413. That's 1-800-729-3413. That's for all residents. We have people there to answer your questions, and we can help you get out of your evacuation zone if you need additional assistance. The state has activated the State Assistance Information Line, also known as the SAIL line. If you need information, again, information only on resources. They cannot get you people, but if you need to ask a question, that is what the SAIL line is for. 1-800-342-3557. Again, that's 1-800-342-3557. We have English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole waiting to help you out. Additional preparedness resources can be found at floridadisaster.org/update. Make sure you follow us on X, Instagram, at FLSERT, and on Facebook at FDEM, as we are sharing updates in real time. Please make sure that you have a way to receive alerts. Make sure that you see all the additional information at your county emergency management agency at floridadisaster.org/counties. And again, thank you, Governor, for your continued support and partnership.
Thanks, Jared.
All right, thank you, Governor, and good morning. We have continued to respond to Hurricane Helene and also ramp up our efforts to prepare for Hurricane Milton. To date, FDOT has removed nearly 180,000 cubic yards of debris statewide, and as you heard from Governor DeSantis, we've taken the mission of removing as much as debris as possible before Milton makes landfall very serious. We've mobilized every available state asset and resource to do just this. It's been a partnership between FDOT, DEM, Florida Department of Agriculture, the National Guard, and the State Guard. We have a lot of people on the ground. We have a lot of equipment on the ground. We have continued to remove debris. It is really important that everybody understand we're in this thing together. As you heard from the governor, we saw a lot of private property owners bringing debris to landfills throughout the night last night. We highly encourage that. Every little bit of debris that gets removed counts and gets us to our goal and helps us fulfill that mission. We are calling on all of our local governments, local municipalities, and debris vendors and contractors. If you have available resources and available assets, please deploy those. Join us. Join state employees and our asset deployment of all of our equipment to remove debris in Pinellas, Manatee specifically, where they were hit hard by Helene. This is a very important mission. We're all in this together. We need everybody to mobilize their resources and assets. As you've heard from the governor, throughout the day yesterday, we moved a lot of debris. We're going to continue working until it's no longer safe to do so, and our goal, again, is to remove as much debris as we can possibly remove before Hurricane Milton makes landfall. As you heard from the governor, we are preparing to suspend tolls effective at 10:30 a.m. this morning for West Florida, Central Florida, and Alligator Alley to help facilitate those evacuations. We have seen people begin to leave already, which is a good thing. You need to leave early. If you're within those low-lying areas where storm surge could impact you, the earlier you leave, the better. It's going to help with traffic, it's going to help with evacuations, and it will make your trip a lot easier. We've seen increased volumes on I-75 and I-4. We're continuing to watch traffic live with our 10 regional traffic management centers across the state. They operate 24/7. We've increased the number and frequency of our Road Ranger Service Patrol and Motorist Aid to facilitate those evacuations. They do have the ability to aid motorists with fuel, water, and also remove stranded or idle vehicles out of the travelway. We've also prepared our shoulders for what we call emergency shoulder use. As volumes pick up and speeds lower for the interstate facilities, we then begin to implement what's known as emergency shoulder use, and we open up the shoulders of our interstates for live traffic. We do that when the speeds get down to around 40 miles per hour. We have a partnership with Florida Highway Patrol, and they go out there, the troopers go out there live real time and assist people in getting on the shoulder to help relieve congestion. We've used this in multiple storms. We used it for Hurricane Irma. We used it for Hurricane Ian. It was very successful, and so we're prepared and ready to do that as volumes continue to pick up. A lot of rain has already fallen across the state of Florida. The ground is saturated. More rain is anticipated to fall before Hurricane Milton makes landfall. So in terms of transportation, we are anticipating a vegetative debris event. We're ramping up our resources for cut and toss and clearing roads. We're preparing all of our drainage structures and drainage systems, cleaning those out. We encourage all of our local governments, our counties, local municipalities to do the same thing. so that we can get roads back open as quickly as possible. We're watching very closely our bridges and low-lying roads in coastal areas, and also our bridges and low-lying roads around rivers, creeks, and streams inland with the amount of rainfall that's coming in. And we're going to be prepared to deploy damage assessment teams and effect emergency temporary repairs immediately after the storm passes through based on what we see and find. We're staging generators for traffic signal power. We're staging pumps for potential flooding, and we're going to be ready to roll and ready to respond as soon as Hurricane Milton passes through. We're committing every possible and available resource to respond to this storm. We've had over 2,000 FDOT employees actively responding to Hurricane Helene. They're going to continue working through Hurricane Milton. We are committed to getting the job done, and we're going to make sure it happens. If you need information on traffic, fl511.com is the place to get traffic information. It is updated live, real time by our traffic management centers. A lot of times during emergency preparedness and response, the third-party navigation apps sometimes don't have all of the accurate information. fl511.com is the place to get traffic information. Thank you, Governor.
Okay, so we're ramping up. We've been ramping up all weekend. We've got a massive amount of resources that are have been mobilized or continue to be mobilized, including this debris mission, which we think is critical. I would also just say this is a storm. When these hurricanes make landfall, they obviously will weaken some, but it's projected to leave the Florida Peninsula on the east coast of Florida still as a hurricane. So it isn't like this is going to be something where it hits as a hurricane and ends up more of just a tropical system by the time it leaves the state. It's going to remain a hurricane at some level all the way through exiting on the east coast of Florida. And again, we don't have a guaranteed track in terms of where this thing's going to make landfall. You're talking about 50 miles north, 50 miles south. That'll make a huge difference in terms of where you have the most significant impacts, and there's just no way to know right now where exactly that's going to be. And so that's why anybody on the west coast of and then if you are in the path of this on the interior part of Florida, you're going to get some strong winds. It isn't like it's just going to be a rainstorm. I mean, all the way until it exits the state, it's going to be powerful. So please take the appropriate precautions. Listen to your local officials, and we'll get through this. We'll respond very quickly, but this does have the potential to have a lot of damage. Okay.
Anticipating this to be the largest evacuation since Irma in like 2017?
It's hard to know exactly. I mean, I think Irma, there was a lot of people that got on the road and then they had to go back and this. And so it was a little bit different, I think, situation here. Here we know that if you are in an area on the Florida Peninsula on the west coast of the state that is vulnerable to storm surge, you're likely going to be under some type of an evacuation order. Certainly anywhere in that center part of the state, west central Florida, as you get down to Bradenton, Sarasota, Charlotte, Pasco, all those areas are going to have evacuation orders for sure. So it is going to be a significant number of people. We'll see exactly how that shakes out, but it's a major issue because of we have a storm that could hit in different spots. I mean, that's just the reality that we're dealing with. I mean, if we knew exactly where it was going to hit, you probably would evacuate fewer people, but we don't know that. And as we saw with Hurricane Ian, there was a thought a couple days before it was going to hit one place. It ended up hitting much further south. So in this storm, even though a lot of the models track it somewhere in that Sarasota, Bradenton, Tampa Bay area right now, and maybe that's what ends up happening, it potentially could hit further north. It potentially could hit further south. So just knowing that and knowing the range of storm surge that you're dealing with, you're going to see a lot of evacuation orders.
No deaths were reported in Taylor County with Helene. The sheriff says it was because everyone evacuated, those communities were leveled. Talk about the importance of people listening to those evacuation orders for this one.
Well, Taylor County had more storm surge than even is being predicted for this storm at this point. I mean, you had 15, maybe even 20 feet in some of those areas. So you had homes that withstood Hurricane Idalia, which was hit as a Category 3. It was a 4 in the water, and then it hit as a 3. and survived it fine. And then on Helene, they were totally wiped off the map. And that's all because of the storm surge. It is the winds were more with Helene than with Idalia, but not so much more that a house could go fine and then get obliterated. It was the storm surge. And when you get away from the storm surge, then you're going to be able to most likely ride out the storm and be safe. You hide from the wind and you run from the water. You can find structures in Florida that can withstand, even if you're in the path of the storm, that can withstand the wind. There's a lot of things in Florida that are built to be able to withstand major hurricane force winds. But you just can't contend with storm surge that is 10, 15 feet of storm surge. I mean, Kevin showed, this is a little bit over 10 feet, this room. So that's a significant thing, and you're just not going to be able to beat Mother Nature. So I think the reason why they had no fatalities is because the people that were in those areas that got whacked by the storm surge did get out. Now, we always have, and in Helene, we had storm fatalities attributed to the storm from, a tree can fall somewhere, you can have a traffic accident, you can have all that. That's just more likely to happen in more populated areas, and it's very unfortunate. And so some of those things can kind of just be freak occurrences with that. But the one thing that people can control is if you are in an area that is vulnerable to this surge, if you get out of there, the chance of you being able to ride this out and returning home safely is very, very high. If you stay in there and you got 10 feet, you're really, really taking a risk with your life and your safety.
There's a picture of a whole field of bucket trucks and line crews ready to go to put power up. We don't have that right now, and it sounds like you said that the private.
No, they're being mobilized now. You think.
How many do we have pulled together so far?
Well, they're working with the companies, but we've been talking with them over the weekend. They understand, and so if you look at the path of the storm, Tampa Bay, you got Tico, you got a lot of Duke, and then to the extent it goes south of Tampa Bay across, you pretty much have FPL. And so, these are major engines. We do have some municipals, we do have some co-ops as well, but they did a lot with this. So that is happening. They are actively working to bring as many people in as possible. You're looking at probably not going to be able to do any restoration until Thursday morning would likely be as early as you're going to be able to do it, depending on, and it may even be later if the storm continues to move slower than anticipated. But they are all actively bringing people in, and I think you're going to continue to see more and more people brought into the state over the next few days.
Bring line workers in from the western United States because there's so much committed to the Carolinas after Helene. Is there a problem with just finding enough line workers now to come in and do that work?
Well, they are bringing people from further away from Florida than traditionally because